Strength is earned, not given. Weakness has no place in our pack. That's what Alpha Thorn told Arya every single day of her miserable existence. But Arya would learn that the weakest wolf in the Shadow Moon pack carried a destiny that would shake the foundations of every werewolf kingdom in existence. Because when you're born an Omega, powerless, wolfless, and worthless, you learn that the world doesn't just reject you, it devours you. And on the night of the mate selection ceremony, when the wolves howled for blood and her own pack turned against her, Arya discovered that some rejections are blessings in disguise. But by then, it would be far too late to run from the monster who claimed her as his. Chapter 1. The Omega's Curse. The scent of wolfsbane and humiliation clung to Arya's skin like a second layer. She scrubbed harder at the stone floor of the pack house, her knees raw and bleeding through the thin fabric of her worn dress. Around her, wolves in their human forms laughed and celebrated, their voices a cacophony of joy that made her stomach twist with something that felt dangerously close to envy. "Careful, Omega," a sickeningly sweet voice cooed above her. "You missed a spot." Arya didn't need to look up to know who it was. Selene Blackwater, the pack's golden child, the beta's daughter, and the wolf who made Arya's life a living hell, stood over her with a crystal goblet full of red wine, the kind that cost more than Arya would see in a lifetime. "I'll get it," Arya whispered, keeping her eyes down. Submission. That was the only language Omegas were allowed to speak. "I don't think you heard me properly." The wine splashed across the freshly cleaned stones, spreading like blood across marble. Laughter erupted from the gathered wolves. Selene's perfectly manicured hand gestured to the mess with mock concern. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me. You should clean that up before Alpha Thorn sees. You know how he feels about slovenly work." Arya's fingers tightened around the scrub brush, her knuckles white. She was 19 years old enough to have shifted, old enough to have found her wolf, old enough to be a full member of the pack, but her wolf had never come. Month after month, year after year, she remained trapped in this weak human form, while every other wolf her age had long since experienced their first transformation. Wolfless, powerless, worthless. The three words that defined her entire existence. "Yes, Lady Selene," Arya murmured, reaching for a cloth. "That's better. It's so important to know one's place, don't you think?" Selene's smile was poisonous honey. "Especially tonight. The mate selection ceremony is in 3 hours, and we wouldn't want the Alpha's potential mates to see such filth." The mate selection ceremony. Arya's chest tightened with an emotion she couldn't name. Tonight, Alpha Thorn would choose his Luna from among the eligible females in the pack. It was a great honor, they said, a blessing from the moon goddess herself. But Omegas weren't allowed to participate. Omegas didn't get mates. They got orders. "I'll have this cleaned immediately," Arya said, her voice steady despite the burning shame in her throat. "See that you do." Selene leaned down, her breath hot against Arya's ear. "And Arya? Stay out of sight tonight. No one wants to be reminded that our pack harbors such weakness. It's embarrassing." The words shouldn't have hurt. Arya had heard worse, much worse over the years. But something about tonight, about the ceremony, about the constant reminder that she would never be chosen, never be wanted, never be anything more than the pack's servant. It cracked something inside her chest. Selene glided away, her designer dress swishing against the floor that Arya had spent 6 hours cleaning. Around her, other wolves whispered and pointed, some with pity, most with contempt. "Can you believe she's still here? If I were Alpha, I'd have banished her years ago. My mother says she's cursed. That's why her wolf never came." Cursed, or just pathetic? Arya's hands moved mechanically, cleaning the wine, polishing the stones, making herself invisible. It was a skill she'd perfected over 19 years of survival. Disappear, submit, endure. The pack house bustled with activity as evening approached. Wolves in elegant clothing arrived for the ceremony, high-ranking members from neighboring packs, potential allies, and warriors who served Alpha Thorn with unwavering loyalty. The air hummed with excitement, and the musk of powerful wolves asserting their dominance. Arya worked in the shadows, carrying trays of food she wasn't allowed to eat, pouring wine she wasn't allowed to taste, listening to conversations about a future she wasn't allowed to have. They say the Lycan King might attend tonight. Someone whispered nearby. Don't be ridiculous. Why would King Cade come to a simple pack ceremony? I heard Alpha Thorn invited him personally. An alliance with the Lycan Kingdom would make us the most powerful pack in the realm. The Lycan King doesn't form alliances. He conquers. The name sent a shiver down Arya's spine. King Cade of the Lycan Kingdom, the most feared ruler in werewolf history. They said he was a monster, a beast who'd killed his own father to take the throne. They said, his eyes glowed red with bloodlust, that he could tear through 100 wolves without breaking a sweat, that he took pleasure in the screams of his enemies. Lycans were different from regular werewolves. Stronger, faster, more ruthless. They were the apex predators, and King Cade was the apex of them all. Arya. A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. The Alpha wants to see you. Now. Her blood turned to ice. Alpha Thorn never summoned her unless she'd done something wrong. And when Omegas did something wrong, the punishment was swift and brutal. She made her way through the pack house, her heart hammering against her ribs. The Alpha's study was on the 3rd floor. A room that smelled of leather, whiskey, and dominance. She knocked 3 times, as was required. Enter. Alpha Thorn sat behind his massive oak desk, his presence filling the room like smoke. He was a large man, muscular and imposing, with silver streaking through his dark hair and eyes that could strip the courage from the bravest wolf. At 45, he was in his prime, and everyone knew he could have had any she-wolf in the pack as his mate, which made what he said next all the more devastating. You'll be attending the ceremony tonight. Arya's head snapped up, confusion flooding her features. Alpha? I don't understand. Omegas aren't. I'm aware of what Omegas are and are not allowed to do. Thorn interrupted, his voice like gravel. But the moon goddess works in mysterious ways, and I've received a vision. You will stand with the other eligible females tonight. Hope dangerous. Foolish hope sparked in Arya's chest. You mean, I could be chosen as? Don't be absurd. Thorn's laugh was cruel. You, as Luna? I'd sooner mate with a common house cat. He stood, walking around the desk to tower over her. No, Arya, you'll be there for a different reason. Insurance, let's call it. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to obey. His hand shot out, gripping her chin roughly, forcing her to meet his eyes. You'll wear the ceremonial dress. You'll stand with the others. And when I make my choice, you'll smile and bow like the grateful little Omega you are. Do you understand? Yes, Alpha, she whispered, even though she understood nothing. Good. He released her, and she stumbled backward. Now get ready. And Arya, if you embarrass me tonight, if you step one toe out of line, I'll personally ensure you spend the rest of your pathetic life in the dungeons. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Alpha. He dismissed her with a wave, and Arya fled the study, her mind reeling. Why would Alpha Thorn want her at the ceremony? What possible purpose could she serve? Insurance. The word echoed in her skull, ominous and unclear. In the servants' quarters, a cramped room she shared with 2 other lower-ranking wolves, Arya found a dress laid out on her cot. It was ceremonial white, as required, but unlike the elegant gowns the other females would wear, this one was simple, plain, a dress that screamed Omega to anyone who looked at it. She put it on anyway, her hands shaking. The other servants had already left for the ceremony hall, which meant Arya was alone when the first pain struck. It started in her chest, a burning sensation that spread through her veins like liquid fire. She gasped, doubling over, her vision blurring at the edges. This wasn't normal. This was her wolf. After 19 years of silence, after countless nights spent praying to the moon goddess for just a glimpse of her wolf, Arya felt it stirring inside her. Not emerging, not yet, but present, aware, angry. No, Arya whispered through gritted teeth. Not now, please, not now. But her wolf didn't listen. It pushed against her consciousness, demanding recognition, demanding freedom. The pain intensified until Arya was on her knees, tears streaming down her face, her body convulsing with the effort of holding back a transformation that had been delayed for far too long. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The pain receded, leaving Arya gasping on the cold floor, her ceremonial dress wrinkled and damp with sweat. Her wolf retreated back into the depths of her soul, silent once more. But something had changed. Arya could feel it, a presence inside her that hadn't been there before. Dormant, but definitely there. She pulled herself to her feet, smoothed down her dress, and made her way to the ceremony hall on unsteady legs. The hall was magnificent. Hundreds of candles lit the space, casting dancing shadows across walls decorated with the pack's silver and black colors. Wolves in their finest clothing filled the seats, their conversations a low hum of anticipation. At the front of the hall, Alpha Thorn stood on a raised platform, his ceremonial robes making him look every inch the powerful leader. And lined up beside the platform, like offerings to a god, stood 20 of the pack's most beautiful she-wolves. Selene was among them, her dress a masterpiece of silk and lace, her smile confident and cruel. Arya was directed to the end of the line, as far from the Alpha as possible. The other females didn't acknowledge her. To them, she might as well have been invisible. Wolves of Shadowmoon Pack. Alpha Thorn's voice boomed through the hall. Tonight, we honor the sacred tradition of the mate selection. Tonight, I will choose a Luna worthy of standing beside me, worthy of bearing the next generation of strong wolves, worthy of... The doors to the hall burst open. A wave of power, pure, undiluted, suffocating power crashed over every wolf in the room. Arya's knees buckled. Around her, wolves dropped to the ground in involuntary submission, their necks bared, their bodies trembling. Because standing in the doorway, flanked by 4 massive Lycan guards, was King Cade himself. He was everything the rumors promised and more. Tall, at least 6.5 feet, with a body built for war. Black hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that was too beautiful to be human and too terrifying to be anything else. His eyes, currently fixed on Alpha Thorn, glowed with an otherworldly silver light. And when those eyes swept across the line of females, pausing for just a fraction of a second on Arya, she felt her newly awakened wolf do something impossible. It recognized him. Alpha Thorn. King Cade's voice was velvet wrapped around steel. I hope I'm not interrupting. Subscribe if you believe Arya deserves better than a life of servitude and shame. Because wolves like Arya need an audience that won't turn away when her world is about to shatter. Drop a comment if Arya's pain is something you've felt too, the pain of being overlooked, underestimated, and told you're not enough. Chapter 2. The Lycan's Claim. The silence in the ceremony hall was deafening. Every wolf remained frozen in submission, their heads bowed, their bodies trembling under the weight of King Cade's presence. Even Alpha Thorn, powerful as he was, had paled considerably, though he managed to keep his chin up, a small act of defiance that didn't go unnoticed. King Cade. Thorn's voice was strained but respectful. This is an unexpected honor. We didn't receive word that you'd accepted our invitation. I don't send word, Cade replied, stepping into the hall with a predatory grace that made Arya's newly awakened wolf whimper inside her chest. I simply arrive. His 4 Lycan guards fanned out behind him, each one radiating enough power to rival any alpha in the realm. But they were nothing compared to their king. Cade moved through the room like death itself, beautiful, inevitable, and utterly terrifying. Arya kept her eyes down, but she could feel his presence growing closer. The air around her seemed to thicken, to pulse with energy that made her skin prickle and her heart race. Please. Thorn gestured to the empty seat that had been prepared just in case at the front of the hall. Join us. We're honored by your presence at our mate selection ceremony. Are you? Cade's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. How quaint. A mate selection. I haven't witnessed one of these archaic rituals in decades. He didn't sit. Instead, he prowled along the line of females, his silver eyes assessing each one with the cold efficiency of a predator evaluating prey. Selene practically glowed under his attention, her chest thrust forward, her smile sultry and inviting. Cade walked past her without a second glance, past all of them, until he stood directly in front of Arya. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the scent of pine and winter storms and something wild that made her wolf claw at her insides, desperate to emerge. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything except stand there, while the most dangerous creature in existence studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. It was a command that bypassed her conscious mind and spoke directly to her wolf. Her head lifted before she could stop it, and she found herself staring into eyes that held the light of 1,000 moons. Up close, King Cade was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, lips that held the barest hint of cruelty. But it was his eyes that trapped her silver irises that seemed to see straight through her skin, through her bones, into the very essence of her soul. "What's your name?" His voice had softened, just slightly, but the command in it remained absolute. "Arya," she whispered. "Arya Winters, Your Majesty." "Arya," he repeated her name like he was tasting it, testing the weight of it on his tongue. "And what are you, Arya Winters?" The question confused her. I'm a wolf, Your Majesty. From the Shadow Moon Pack." "That's not what I asked." He stepped closer, and Arya's breath caught in her throat. "What are you?" She didn't understand the question, but her wolf did. Her wolf surged forward, pushing against her consciousness with a desperate urgency that made her gasp. And then, to her absolute horror, words tumbled from her lips, words she didn't choose, words her wolf forced through her. "Omega, I'm an Omega, Your Majesty, the lowest rank, wolfless until tonight, worthless by pack law. Your Majesty?" Alpha Thorn's voice cut through the moment, sharp with barely concealed panic. "That one is merely here as a formality. She's not actually part of the selection. Perhaps you'd like to meet." "I wasn't speaking to you, Alpha." Cade didn't even turn around. "In fact, I don't recall giving you permission to speak at all." The threat in those words was unmistakable. Thorn's jaw clenched, but he fell silent. Cade's hand reached out, and Arya watched in frozen terror as his fingers brushed against her cheek. His skin was hot, unnaturally hot, and the moment he touched her, electricity shot through her entire body. Her wolf howled in recognition, in desperate, clawing need. And she knew. Oh gods, she knew. "No," Arya breathed, taking a stumbling step backward. "No, that's not that can't." "Can't what?" Cade's eyes narrowed, but there was something in them now, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Say it, Arya. Tell me what you feel." "I feel nothing," she lied, her voice shaking. "I'm an Omega. I can't. Mate." The word dropped from Cade's lips like a stone into still water. "You're my mate." The ceremony hall erupted in chaos. Wolves leaped to their feet, voices raised in shock and disbelief. Celine's face had gone white, then red, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Alpha Thorn looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his eyes wide with something that looked dangerously close to fear. "That's impossible," Thorn said, his voice barely controlled. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, there must be some mistake. She's an Omega. She doesn't even have a proper wolf. The mate bond it can't." "Are you questioning what I feel, Alpha?" Cade's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Are you suggesting that I, King of the Lycans, don't know my own mate when I'm standing in front of her? I would never presume." "Good, because that would be unwise." Cade turned back to Arya, and the intensity in his gaze made her want to sink into the floor. "The ceremony is over. I'm taking her with me." "No." The word burst from Arya's lips before she could stop it. "I can't. I won't. You don't have a choice, little Omega." There was no cruelty in his words, just simple fact. "You're mine. The moon goddess herself has declared it. Would you deny her will?" "I deny yours," Arya said, shocked by her own boldness. "I don't know you. I don't want this. I won't go." For a moment, something flickered across Cade's face. Surprise maybe, or perhaps respect. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold mask of a king who was used to being obeyed. "Alpha Thorn," Cade said, still looking at Arya. "Tell me, what is the punishment in your pack for an Omega who refuses a direct command?" Thorn's face hardened. "Imprisonment, or banishment. And if she were to leave your pack willingly? With me?" What would that cost her? Nothing, Thorn said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. An Omega leaving the pack is, well, it would be no great loss. Arya's stomach dropped. Of course Thorn would see this as an opportunity to rid himself of his pack's greatest embarrassment, and if he could do it while currying favor with the Lycan King, even better. You see, Arya? Cade's hand cupped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. You can come with me willingly, as my mate, or you can refuse, and your alpha will punish you as pack law demands. Either way, you're leaving this place tonight. The only question is whether you leave with dignity or in chains. That's not a choice, Arya whispered, hating the way her voice cracked. That's a trap. Welcome to the life of an Omega. Cade's thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Arya shivered despite herself. At least with me, you'll never be called worthless again. Your Majesty, Celine's voice rang out, sugary, sweet, and laced with venom. Surely this is some kind of test, some way to prove our pack's loyalty? Because I simply cannot believe that the great Lycan King would truly want an Omega as his mate. It must be a mistake. The Moon Goddess wouldn't. The Moon Goddess doesn't make mistakes, Cade interrupted, his eyes never leaving Arya's face. But wolves do. And questioning her wisdom is the greatest mistake of all. He released Arya's chin and turned to address the hall, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. I came here tonight because I felt a pull, a call from the mate bond that I've waited 32 years to experience. I followed it to this pack, to this ceremony, to her. He gestured to Arya. The Omega, you've all dismissed and degraded. The wolf you've treated as less than nothing. She is mine, and anyone who has harmed her, insulted her, or made her life a misery, will answer to me personally. Do I make myself clear? The threat hung in the air like a blade. Crystal clear, Your Majesty, Thorn said through gritted teeth. Excellent. Cade extended his hand to Arya. Come, little Omega. We're leaving. Arya stared at his hand like it was a serpent ready to strike. Everything in her screamed to refuse, to fight, to do anything except place her hand in his. But what choice did she have? Thorn would punish her for refusal, she could see it in his eyes. The pack had never wanted her. And now, the most powerful creature in existence was offering her. What? Protection? Ownership? She didn't know which terrified her more. Her hand trembled as she reached out, her fingers barely touching his palm. The moment their skin connected, that electric sensation returned stronger this time, powerful enough to steal the breath from her lungs. Her wolf surged forward with a joy that felt foreign and overwhelming. Cade's fingers closed around hers, possessive and warm. There's a good girl, he murmured, and Arya hated the way her body responded to the approval in his voice. Wait. Alpha Thorn stepped forward, his expression calculating. Your Majesty, if Arya is truly your mate, then surely we should discuss the terms of her transfer, pack alliances, trade agreements. Perhaps. There are no terms, Cade said flatly. She's not a commodity to be bartered. She's my mate. I'm taking her. End of discussion. But surely, unless you'd like to challenge my claim? Cade's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Please, Alpha. I'm always happy to settle disputes the old way. Blood and bone. Shall we step outside? Thorn paled. That won't be necessary, Your Majesty. I didn't think so. Cade pulled Arya closer to his side, his arms snaking around her waist in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. Oh, and Alpha, if I find out that anyone in your pack has laid a hand on what's mine, I'll return. And when I do, there won't be a Shadow Moon pack left to lead. Are we understood? Perfectly, Your Majesty. Good. Cade nodded to his guards, who immediately moved to flank him and Arya. Gentlemen, we're done here. As they turned to leave, Arya caught one last glimpse of the ceremony hall, of Celine's twisted expression of rage, of Thorn's barely concealed relief, of the 100 wolves who had made her life hell. Now watching her leave with the most powerful being in their world, she should have felt triumph, victory, something. Instead, she felt only terror, because as King Cade led her out into the night, his hand burning against her waist, his scent overwhelming her senses, Arya realized she hadn't been saved. She'd been claimed. And there was a significant difference between the two. The night air hit her face like a slap, cool and clean, after the suffocating atmosphere of the ceremony hall. A massive black carriage waited outside, pulled by horses that looked more wolf than equine, their eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. "Your Majesty," Arya said softly, her voice barely audible. "Please, I need to. I have things in the pack house. Personal items. Can I—" "No." Cade opened the carriage door, his expression brooking no argument. "Whatever you had in that place, you don't need any more. I'll provide everything. Get in." "But, Arya," he said her name like a warning. "Don't make me carry you. It would be undignified for both of us." She climbed into the carriage, her legs shaking so badly she nearly fell. Cade followed, settling into the seat across from her, with the casual grace of a predator utterly confident in his dominance. The door shut. The carriage lurched forward, and Arya watched through the window as the only home she'd ever known terrible as it was disappeared into the darkness behind them. "Why me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "You could have anyone. Why would you want an Omega?" Cade leaned back, his silver eyes glowing in the dim light of the carriage. "Because little Omega," he said softly, "you're not what they told you. You never were." Before Arya could ask what he meant, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave, the result of her wolf's awakening, the stress of the evening, and the overwhelming presence of the male sitting across from her. Her eyes grew heavy despite her fear. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Cade's face, and the ghost of something that might have been gentleness in his expression. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. Either way, when Arya's eyes closed, her life as an Omega ended, and her life as the Lycan King's mate, whatever that meant, began. Chapter 3. The Lycan Kingdom. Arya woke to the sensation of being carried. Strong arms held her against a chest that radiated heat like a furnace, and for a blissful moment before full consciousness returned, she felt safe, protected, the kind of security she'd never experienced in her entire life. Then her eyes opened, and she remembered. King Cade looked down at her, one eyebrow raised. "Welcome back, little Omega. You've been asleep for 3 hours." Arya stiffened in his arms, panic flooding her system. "Put me down. We're almost to your chambers. I'd rather not drop you in the middle of the corridor. I can walk." Clearly, you couldn't a moment ago. But he set her on her feet anyway, steadying her when she swayed. "Easy. Your wolf is still settling. The awakening after so many years dormant can be disorienting." They stood in a hallway that looked like it had been carved from moonlight itself. White marble floors inlaid with silver veins stretched in both directions, lit by crystals that pulsed with soft, ethereal light. Tapestries depicting wolves in battle hung from walls so high Arya couldn't see where they ended. Everything about this place screamed power, wealth, and ancient legacy. The Lycan Palace. She was actually standing in the Lycan Palace. This way. Cade's hand settled on the small of her back, guiding her forward. His touch burned through the thin fabric of her ceremonial dress, and her traitorous wolf preened at the contact. They passed Lycan guards, who bowed deeply as their king walked by, their eyes flickering to Arya with undisguised curiosity. She caught whispers that followed in their wake. "Is that her? An Omega? He chose an Omega? She doesn't even look like much. The king's finally found his mate after all these years, and it's a wolfless nobody?" Each word was a knife between her ribs, but Arya kept her chin up. She'd survived 19 years of similar whispers. She could survive a few more. Cade stopped before a set of double doors engraved with intricate wolf designs. "These are your chambers. They connect to mine through the adjoining door." He pushed the doors open, revealing a room that stole the breath from Arya's lungs. It was larger than the entire servants' quarters back at Shadowmoon Pack. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one side, draped in silks the color of midnight. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden that glowed with bioluminescent flowers, their light dancing like tiny stars. A sitting area with plush furniture, a writing desk made of dark wood, and a wardrobe that could fit a dozen wolves. It was more luxury than Arya had seen in her entire life. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Why would you give me all this?" "I'm just—" "You're my mate," Cade interrupted, his voice firm, which makes you the future Lycan Queen. This is the bare minimum of what you deserve. Queen? The word came out as a squeak. I can't be a queen. I can barely read. I don't know anything about politics or ruling or… You'll learn. He moved to the wardrobe, opening it to reveal dozens of dresses in every color imaginable. I took the liberty of having appropriate clothing prepared. Your measurements were… estimated. If anything doesn't fit, tell the servants, and they'll adjust it. Arya stared at the dresses, her mind reeling. You had these made before you even met me? I felt the mate bond pulling me 3 days ago. I've been tracking it since then. Cade's expression was unreadable. I knew I'd find you eventually. I simply didn't know you'd be… what you are. An Omega, Arya said bitterly. Worthless, weak, everything a Lycan King's mate shouldn't be. Stop. The command in his voice made her wolf whimper. Cade crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. You will never call yourself worthless in my presence again. Do you understand me? But I am. You're mine. That makes you the most valuable thing in this kingdom. His silver eyes blazed with intensity. Whatever lies your pack told you, whatever poison they fed you about your worth, forget it. You're in my kingdom now. My rules. And rule number 1 is that you never disparage what belongs to me, including yourself. The possessiveness in his words should have angered her, should have made her want to fight, to rage against being owned like a piece of property. But her wolf was practically purring, basking in the attention, in the fierce protectiveness radiating from their mate. Their mate. The thought made Arya's stomach twist. I need to know something, she said quietly. The mate bond, can it be wrong? Can the moon goddess make mistakes? Cade's grip on her shoulders loosened, his expression softening fractionally. No. The mate bond is absolute. It's the one thing in this world that can't be manipulated or faked. He paused. Why do you ask? Because this doesn't make sense. You're a king. A Lycan. The most powerful creature I've ever met. And I'm… She gestured helplessly at herself. I'm nothing. There has to be a reason. Some explanation for why the moon goddess would pair us. Perhaps she has a sense of humor. But there was no amusement in Cade's voice. Or perhaps she knows something we don't. The moon goddess works in patterns we're too blind to see. And… A knock at the door interrupted them. Cade released Arya and called out, Enter. A female Lycan stepped inside, her posture respectful but her eyes sharp with intelligence. She was beautiful in the way all Lycans seemed to be, tall, graceful, with auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and amber eyes that assessed Arya with startling directness. Your Majesty. She bowed to Cade, then turned to Arya with a warmer smile. My lady, I'm Sarah, head of the palace household. I've been assigned as your personal attendant. I don't need an attendant, Arya said quickly. I can take care of myself. Nevertheless, you have one. Cade moved toward the door. Sarah will help you settle in, show you the palace grounds, and answer any questions you have. I have matters to attend to, but I'll return for dinner. We'll eat in my private dining room. 7 o'clock sharp. Wait. Arya reached out instinctively, then dropped her hand, feeling foolish. You're leaving? Something flickered in Cade's eyes. You'll be safe here. The entire palace is warded. No one can harm you. He paused at the threshold. And Arya? Don't try to run. You wouldn't make it past the gates, and I'd be displeased. The threat was gentle but unmistakable. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Arya sank onto the edge of the massive bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Everything that had happened in the last few hours crashed over her at once. The ceremony, Cade's appearance, the mate bond, leaving her pack, and now this palace, this room, this impossible new reality. Overwhelming, isn't it? Sarah's voice was kind. Finding your mate always is, but finding out your mate is the Lycan King? That's a special kind of chaos. How long have you worked for him? Arya asked, grateful for the distraction. 10 years, since I was 16. Sarah moved to the wardrobe, pulling out a simple but elegant dress in soft gray. Here, Let's get you out of that ceremonial gown and into something more comfortable. Then I'll draw you a bath. You look like you could use one." Arya glanced down at herself at the wrinkled, stained white dress that marked her as the Omega who'd been scrubbing floors just hours ago. Shame burned in her cheeks. "I can bathe myself," she said quietly. "I'm sure you can. But it's my job to assist you, and I quite like my job." Sarah's smile was genuine. "Besides, the bathtub in your suite is enchanted. It takes a bit of getting used to. Let me show you how it works, and next time you can do it yourself. Deal?" The kindness in Sarah's voice made something in Arya's chest crack. When was the last time someone had spoken to her without contempt, without mockery or cruelty? "Okay," Arya whispered. "Deal." The bath was indeed magical, literally. Water appeared at the temperature Sarah commanded, scented with oils that smelled of jasmine and vanilla. Steam rose in delicate spirals, and when Arya finally sank into the water, she felt 19 years of tension begin to seep from her muscles. "So," Sarah said, sitting on a stool nearby with Arya's permission, "you're from Shadow Moon Pack. That's Alpha Thorn's territory, isn't it?" "Yes." Arya scrubbed at her arms, watching the dirt and grime dissolve. "You've heard of it? Every pack in the realm knows of Shadow Moon. They're ambitious, brutal, not exactly known for their kindness." Sarah's amber eyes were knowing. Being an Omega there must have been difficult. "It was survival," Arya said simply. "Nothing more." "Nothing. Well, you've survived. And now you're here." Sarah handed her a soft cloth. "For what it's worth, I think you'll be good for him." Arya's head snapped up. "Good for him? How could I possibly be good for the Lycan King? I don't know the first thing about being a queen. Neither did his mother when she mated his father." Sarah's expression turned wistful. She was from a small pack too. Not an Omega, but not high-ranking either. Everyone said the match would never work, but she softened him, made him remember there was more to ruling than power and fear. What happened to her? She died 20 years ago. Illness. Kincaid was only 12. Sarah's voice dropped. He's been hard ever since. Cold, focused only on making the Lycan kingdom stronger, more feared. Some say he's forgotten how to be anything but a king. And you think I can change that? Arya laughed, but there was no humor in it. An Omega who can barely control her own wolf. Who has no training, no education, no— "You're his mate," Sarah interrupted gently. "That's more powerful than any training. The mate bond doesn't care about rank or status. It cares about souls. And for some reason, the moon goddess decided your soul matches his." Arya wanted to argue, to point out all the reasons this was impossible, insane, doomed to fail. But her wolf stirred inside her, and for the first time since awakening, it sent her a feeling that wasn't fear or confusion. It sent her hope. After the bath, Sarah helped Arya into the gray dress. It fit perfectly, almost suspiciously so, given that Cade had only estimated her measurements. The fabric was softer than anything she'd ever worn, flowing around her body like water. "Now then," Sarah said, fastening the last button. "Let me show you the palace. You have a few hours before dinner, and you should know your way around." The tour was dizzying. The Lycan Palace was enormous, a sprawling complex of towers, courtyards, training grounds, and gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Sarah pointed out the throne room, the council chambers, the library that made Arya's eyes widen with longing, the kitchens that smelled of spices and roasting meat. But it was the training grounds that made Arya stop in her tracks. Dozens of Lycan warriors sparred in the courtyard below, their movements so fast they were almost blurs. The sound of clashing weapons and growling wolves filled the air. And in the center of it all, shirtless and glistening with sweat, was Cade. He moved like violence given form, every strike precise, every dodge calculated. He was fighting 3 opponents at once, and he was winning, easily. When one Lycan came at him with a blade, Cade caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and sent the warrior flying across the courtyard with barely any effort. "He trains every day," Sarah said quietly. 4 hours minimum. Says a king who can't defend his kingdom doesn't deserve to rule it. Arya watched, mesmerized and terrified in equal measure. This was her mate. This creature of power and violence and cold, calculating strength. What could she possibly offer someone like him? As if sensing her gaze, Cade looked up. His silver eyes found hers across the distance, and even from here, Arya felt the intensity of his attention like a physical touch. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just held her gaze for a long moment before returning to his sparring. But Arya's wolf had perked up at that look, had practically wagged its tail with joy. Traitor. Arya thought. Come on, Sarah said gently. Let's get you back to your chambers. You should rest before dinner. But when they returned to her room, Arya found she couldn't rest. Her mind was too full, her emotions too chaotic. She paced the chamber like a caged animal, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She was mated to the Lycan King. She was going to be queen of the most powerful kingdom in the realm. She, Arya Winters, the worthless Omega who'd spent her life on her knees scrubbing floors. It was laughable. Impossible. Terrifying. And yet, somewhere deep inside her chest, in the place where her wolf lived, there was a warmth that hadn't been there before, a connection that pulsed with life and possibility, the mate bond. Whether she wanted it or not, whether it made sense or not, it was real, and there was no running from it. At precisely 7 o'clock, a knock came at her door. When Arya opened it, she found Cade waiting, now dressed in formal attire, black pants, and a silver tunic that made his eyes glow even brighter. Ready? He asked. No, Arya wanted to say. I'll never be ready for this. But instead, she nodded and placed her hand in his outstretched palm, and together, they walked to dinner, the Lycan King and his Omega mate. The future neither of them had planned for, but both were now bound to, for better or worse. Chapter 4. Dinner with a Monster. The private dining room was intimate in a way that made Arya's anxiety spike. Unlike the grand halls and sprawling chambers she'd seen during her tour, this space was designed for two. A table set with silver and crystal sat before a fireplace that crackled with blue flames. Magical fire. Arya realized. That gave off warmth without smoke. The walls were lined with books, and large windows overlooked the moonlit gardens below. It was beautiful, romantic even, and it terrified her. Cade pulled out a chair, gesturing for her to sit. When she hesitated, his eyebrow arched. I promise the furniture won't bite. I can't say the same for myself, but the furniture is perfectly safe. Was that a joke? Arya couldn't tell. She sat quickly, and Cade took the seat across from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the way the firelight played across his sharp features. Servants appeared with dishes that made Arya's mouth water despite her nervousness. Roasted meats, fresh bread, vegetables glazed in herbs she couldn't name, and fruits that sparkled like they'd been dipped in starlight. It was more food than she'd seen in a month back at Shadowmoon Pack. Eat, Cade commanded, noting her hesitation. You're too thin. When was the last time you had a proper meal? I ate, Arya said defensively, though they both knew it was a weak protest. Scraps from the packhouse kitchen don't count as eating. Cade's voice was flat, but there was an edge to it. Anger, Arya realized. He was angry on her behalf. Tell me about your life in Shadowmoon, and don't lie, I'll know. Arya picked up her fork, using the motion to avoid his gaze. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with why your wolf didn't emerge until last night. I don't know. It was the truth. The pack healers said I was defective, that maybe I had human blood somewhere in my lineage, or that the moon goddess had cursed me for some unknown sin. Ridiculous. Cade cut into his meat with precise movements. Wolves don't get cursed by the moon goddess for no reason, and there's no such thing as defective. What did they have you doing? What were your duties? Arya's fingers tightened around her fork. Cleaning, cooking, serving, whatever needed to be done. Servant work. His eyes narrowed. For 19 years, you were treated as a servant in your own pack. I was an Omega. That's what Omegas do. No. The word was sharp enough to make her flinch. That's what your pack chose to do with you. Omegas are meant to be the heart of a pack, the mediators, the peacekeepers, the emotional anchors. They're rare and valuable, not servants to be abused. Arya stared at him. That's not no one ever said. Because your alpha is a fool who doesn't understand his own pack structure. Cade leaned back in his chair, his silver eyes assessing. Tell me about the mate ceremony. Why were you included if Omegas aren't typically allowed to participate? The memory made Arya's stomach turn. Alpha Thorn summoned me that evening. Said I had to stand with the other females. He called it insurance. Insurance. Cade's jaw clenched. Against what? I don't know. He didn't explain. Arya forced herself to take a bite of food, and the explosion of flavor on her tongue was almost enough to distract her from the intensity of Cade's stare. Almost. He just said if I embarrassed him, I'd spend the rest of my life in the dungeons. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He threatened you with imprisonment for attending a ceremony he forced you to participate in. Cade's voice was dangerously soft. Interesting. It doesn't matter now, Arya said quickly, sensing the rage building behind his calm exterior. I'm here. He's there. It's over. Is it? Cade tilted his head. Tell me, Arya. If I hadn't shown up last night, what would have happened to you? She didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to remember the look in Thorn's eyes when he'd summoned her, the way Celine had smiled with such cruel satisfaction. But Cade was waiting, and something told her he wouldn't accept anything less than the truth. I think, she said slowly, he was planning to offer me to whoever he chose as Luna. As a gift. A servant for his new mate. The glass in Cade's hand shattered. Arya jumped, her heart racing as wine and crystal fragments scattered across the table. But Cade's expression remained eerily calm, even as blood welled from a cut on his palm. He was going to give you away. Each word was precise, controlled, like property. Your Majesty, your hand, will heal in seconds. Answer me. His silver eyes burned into hers. Would you have accepted that fate? What choice would I have had? Arya's voice cracked. I'm an Omega. We don't get choices. We get orders. You have choices now. Cade stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. He pulled her to her feet, his hands one still bleeding, one clean framing her face. You will always have choices with me. Do you understand? I don't understand any of this, Arya whispered. Why do you care? You don't know me. The mate bond is it's just chemistry, biology. It doesn't mean you have to. The mate bond is sacred, Cade interrupted, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. It's the moon goddess herself saying that your soul and mine are two halves of the same whole. That's not just chemistry, Arya. That's destiny. I don't believe in destiny. Then believe in this. He leaned down, his forehead touching hers, and Arya felt the mate bond flare to life between them, a golden thread of connection that pulsed with warmth and longing, and something that felt dangerously close to belonging. Feel that? That's real. More real than anything your pack ever told you about yourself. Arya's breath hitched. The bond was overwhelming, this close a living thing that wrapped around her heart and squeezed. Her wolf was practically singing, desperate to complete the bond, to seal their connection with the mating bite that would tie them together forever. But Arya's human mind rebelled. This is too fast. I just met you. I can't. I know. Cade released her, stepping back, and the loss of contact made Arya want to whimper. I'm not asking you to complete the bond tonight, or tomorrow, or even next week. I'm asking you to give us a chance. Why? The question burst from her. You could reject the bond. Find someone more suitable. Someone who knows how to be a queen. Reject the bond? Cade's laugh was harsh. Arya, do you have any idea what you're suggesting? Rejecting a mate bond feels like dying. It's agony that never fully heals. Lycans who've done it go mad within months. And even if I could survive it, why would I? The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. If she chose you for me, there's a reason. Or maybe she has a cruel sense of humor, Arya said bitterly, pairing the weakest wolf with the strongest. It's almost poetic. You're not weak. Cade's voice was firm. You survived 19 years in a pack that should have protected you but instead abused you. You endured treatment that would have broken most wolves. And last night, when I gave you an impossible choice, you stood your ground and challenged me. That's not weakness, Arya. That's strength. The words settled into her chest like warmth spreading through ice. No one had ever called her strong before. No one had ever looked at her the way Cade was looking at her now, like she was valuable, worthy, important. It made her want to cry. "I don't know how to be what you need," she admitted quietly. "Then we'll figure it out together." Cade gestured back to the table. "Now, sit. Finish your dinner. You need your strength." "For what?" "Tomorrow, your training begins." Arya's head snapped up. "Training? Did you think I'd just let you wander the palace aimlessly?" Cade settled back into his chair as servants rushed in to clean up the broken glass. "You're going to be queen. That requires education, combat training, etiquette lessons, pack law, diplomatic protocol." "Combat training?" Arya squeaked. "I've never fought anyone in my life." "Then it's past time you learned." Cade's smile was predatory. "Every queen in Lycan history has been a warrior. You'll be no exception. But I can barely control my wolf, which is why we'll start with the basics." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with something that might have been excitement. "Your wolf has been suppressed for 19 years. Once we unlock her properly, you'll be stronger than you can imagine. Omegas aren't weak, Arya. They're just different. Their strength lies in other areas." "Like what?" "That's what we're going to discover." Cade took a sip of his wine from a new glass and studied her over the rim. "I have a theory about you, little Omega. About why your wolf was dormant for so long." "What theory?" "That your pack was suppressing it deliberately." Arya froze. "That's impossible." "Why would they?" "Because they sensed something in you, something that threatened them." Cade set down his glass. "True Omegas are rare, maybe 1 in 1,000 wolves, and they have abilities that other wolves don't. Empathic connection. The power to calm or incite entire packs with their emotional state. Some can even influence other wolves' decisions through their presence alone." "That sounds like alpha abilities." Arya protested. "It's the opposite of alpha abilities. Alphas rule through dominance and force. Omegas rule through connection and influence. And a strong Omega in a pack like Shadowmoon, a pack built on cruelty and fear, would be a problem. So they convinced you that you were worthless, kept you beaten down, made sure your wolf never emerged." The theory was insane. But something about it resonated with Arya, rang true in a way she couldn't explain. She thought about all the times she'd felt things, emotions from other wolves, their anger and pain and fear bleeding into her until she couldn't tell where they ended and she began. She'd thought she was just too sensitive, too weak to handle the world around her. But what if it had been something else? What if she'd been feeling what they felt because that was her gift? "How do we know if you're right?" Arya asked quietly. "We test it. Tomorrow." Cade stood, extending his hand. "But for now, let me walk you back to your chambers. You need rest." Arya took his hand. And this time, the electric connection didn't startle her quite as much. They walked in silence through the moonlit corridors, past guards who bowed as they passed, until they reached her door. "Thank you," Arya said, not entirely sure what she was thanking him for. "For dinner." "For everything." "Don't thank me yet." Cade's expression was unreadable. "Tomorrow is when the real work begins. Be ready at dawn. Sarah will bring you appropriate training clothes." He turned to leave, but Arya's hand shot out, catching his wrist. She didn't know what made her do it, some instinct, some need she didn't understand. "Cade?" His name felt foreign on her tongue. "Why are you being kind to me?" He looked down at where her hand touched his skin, then back up at her face. For a moment, something raw and vulnerable flickered in his silver eyes. "Because," he said softly, "in 32 years, I've never felt anything like what I feel when I look at you. The mate bond is more than I imagined. Stronger, more consuming, and if I have any hope of being the mate you deserve, I need you to believe you're worthy of kindness, of protection, of love." The last word hung in the air between them, terrifying and beautiful. "I don't know if I can believe that," Arya whispered. "Then I'll believe it for both of us." Cade gently extracted his wrist from her grip, but his fingers lingered on hers for just a moment longer. "Until you learn to believe it yourself." He left her standing at her door, her heart pounding and her wolf howling with a longing that made her ache. Inside her chambers, Arya collapsed onto the massive bed, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. Just 24 hours ago, she'd been scrubbing floors in the Shadow Moon pack house. Now she was lying in silk sheets in the Lycan palace, mated to a king, with promises of training and education, and a future she couldn't begin to comprehend. It was too much. Too fast. Too overwhelming. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Arya's last conscious thought wasn't of fear or confusion. It was of silver eyes and gentle hands, and a voice that had called her strong. And for the first time in her life, a tiny part of her wondered if maybe, just maybe, it might be true. Chapter 5. The Awakening. Dawn came too quickly. Arya jerked awake to find Sarah already in her chambers, drawing back the curtains to let pale morning light flood the room. The head attendant moved with practiced efficiency, laying out clothes on the bed, not the elegant dresses from yesterday, but practical training attire in black and silver. "Good morning, my lady," Sarah said cheerfully. "The king expects you in the Eastern training yard in 30 minutes. I've brought breakfast." Arya groaned, pulling a pillow over her face. "Can't we postpone?" "I'm still processing yesterday. The king doesn't postpone." Sarah's tone was sympathetic, but firm. "Come on. The faster you get ready, the more time you'll have to eat." 20 minutes later, Arya stood before the mirror, barely recognizing herself. The training clothes fit snugly, leather pants reinforced at the knees, a fitted tunic that allowed freedom of movement, and boots that laced up to her calves. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid, courtesy of Sarah's quick fingers. She looked like a warrior. She felt like an imposter. "You'll do fine," Sarah assured her, reading the anxiety on her face. "The king is a demanding teacher, but he's fair, and he won't push you beyond what you can handle." "How do you know that?" "Because I've watched him train others for 10 years. He's brutal with his warriors, expects perfection, accepts nothing less. But with you?" Sarah smiled knowingly. "With you, he'll be different. Trust me." The Eastern training yard was empty, except for one figure. Cade stood in the center of the space, already moving through what looked like a warm-up routine. He wore only loose pants, his torso bare and glistening with a light sheen of sweat that made every muscle stand out in sharp definition. Arya tried not to stare at the intricate tattoos that covered his shoulders and chest, ancient Lycan runes that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. He turned as she approached, his silver eyes assessing her from head to toe. "You're on time." "Good. That's the first lesson. Punctuality shows respect." "Good morning to you too," Arya muttered. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Fair point. Good morning, Arya. Did you sleep well?" "When I finally stopped thinking about everything, yes. Thinking is overrated. Today, we focus on feeling." He gestured for her to join him in the center of the yard. "Tell me, when was the last time you shifted?" "Never." "I told you. My wolf only just awakened. Then today will be interesting for both of us." Cade circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "Shifting isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional. Your wolf is a part of you, not a separate entity. To shift successfully, you need to understand her, communicate with her." "I don't know how to do that." "Then we'll start simple. Close your eyes." Arya obeyed, feeling vulnerable standing there with her eyes closed while Cade moved around her. She could hear his footsteps, could feel the warmth of his presence as he stopped behind her. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice low and soothing. "Deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Good. Now reach inside yourself. Find that place where your wolf lives." It was easier said than done. Arya had spent 19 years with nothing but silence in that space. But now, as she concentrated, she felt something stirring, a presence that was both foreign and familiar, watching her with cautious curiosity. "I feel her," Arya whispered. "Good. Don't force anything. Just observe. What does she feel like?" Arya focused on the sensation. Scared, confused. She doesn't understand why she was locked away for so long. Tell her she's safe now, that no one will cage her again. The words felt awkward in Arya's mind, but she directed them inward anyway. To her shock, her wolf responded not with words, but with emotion, a wave of gratitude mixed with wariness. like a prisoner who'd been freed but didn't quite trust the open door. "She's listening," Arya said, wonder in her voice. "Of course she is. She's been waiting 19 years to be heard." Cade's hand settled on Arya's shoulders, and the touch sent electricity racing through her. "Now ask her to show herself. Not to shift fully, just to let you see her. To share what she looks like." Arya reached deeper, extending the mental invitation. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, like a curtain being pulled back, she saw her. Her wolf was smaller than she'd expected, not tiny, but lean and graceful rather than imposing. Her fur was pure white, so bright it almost seemed to glow, and her eyes were the same shade of amber as Arya's human ones. But there was something else, something that made Arya's breath catch. Her wolf had silver markings along her muzzle and legs, intricate patterns that looked almost like the runes tattooed on Cade's skin. "She's beautiful," Arya breathed. "Let me see." It wasn't a request. Cade's hands tightened on her shoulders, and suddenly Arya felt him in her mind. A presence that was both gentle and overwhelming, sliding through her consciousness like smoke, until he found the image of her wolf. His sharp intake of breath told her he'd seen the markings. "Impossible," he murmured. Arya's eyes snapped open. "What? What's wrong?" Cade had stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Those markings on your wolf. Do you know what they are?" "No. Should I?" "They're oracle marks." His voice was tight. "Signs of the moon goddess's direct blessing. I've only seen them once before on my mother." The revelation hung in the air between them. Arya struggled to process it. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not just an Omega. You're a blessed Omega." Cade ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "The moon goddess has marked you as special, important. Your gifts will be stronger than any normal Omegas. Your connection to the pack, to other wolves, to the very essence of our nature, it will all be amplified." "But I don't feel powerful," Arya protested. "I feel confused and scared and completely out of my depth, because you've spent 19 years being told you were nothing." Cade's expression hardened with determination. "We're going to fix that, starting now. I want you to shift. I don't know how." "Yes, you do. Your instincts know. Trust them." He took several steps back, giving her space. "Don't think about the mechanics, just want it. Let your wolf come forward. She's been waiting long enough." Arya closed her eyes again, reaching for that presence inside her. Her wolf was more alert now, responding to Cade's commands even through Arya's consciousness. She wanted to emerge, needed to, but fear held Arya back. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I can't control her? What if I'm here?" Cade's voice cut through her panic. "If you lose control, I'll help you. You're safe, Arya. Let go. Let go." Two simple words that asked for everything Arya had been trained not to do. Omegas didn't let go. They held tight. They controlled. They suppressed. But maybe that was the problem. Arya took a deep breath and released the iron grip she'd kept on her emotions. Her fear, her wolf. She felt the presence inside her surge forward with joy and relief. Felt her body begin to change in ways that should have hurt but instead felt like coming home. Bones shifted. Fur sprouted. Her senses exploded with new information, scents and sounds and textures she'd never experienced before. And then she was standing on 4 legs instead of 2, seeing the world through different eyes. She'd shifted. After 19 years of waiting, Arya had finally shifted into her wolf form. The world was overwhelming in this form. Everything was brighter, sharper, more intense. She could smell Cade's scent, pine and winter storms, and something uniquely him, and it called to her wolf in ways that made her want to move closer. She could hear the heartbeat of a bird in a tree 50 yards away, could feel the vibrations of footsteps in the palace above. It was too much input, too much sensation, too much everything. Arya tried to back up and stumbled over her own paws, landing in an ungraceful heap. Cade was there instantly, kneeling beside her. "Easy. It's overwhelming the first time. Just breathe. Focus on my voice." But focusing was hard when everything was screaming for attention. Arya's wolf whined, pressing against Cade's legs, seeking comfort from the only familiar thing in this storm of sensation. Look at me, Cade commanded, and Arya's wolf obeyed instinctively. His silver eyes locked onto hers, calm and steady. Good. Now just stay here with me. Let everything else fade. Just you and me. Nothing else matters. Slowly, gradually, the overwhelming input began to settle into manageable levels. Arya's wolf stopped whining, though she remained pressed against Cade's side, soaking in his warmth and strength. There you are, Cade said softly, running his hand through her white fur. You did it. You shifted on your first try. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Arya made a sound that was half whine, half growl. She wanted to shift back now, wanted to ask him what happened next, but she didn't know how to reverse the transformation. As if reading her mind, Cade said, shifting back is the same as shifting forward. Just want it. Picture your human form and let your wolf recede. It was harder than shifting into wolf form. Her wolf didn't want to go back, didn't want to return to the cage she'd been locked in for so long. But Arya pushed gently, reassuring her that this wasn't permanent, that they could shift again soon. Her wolf reluctantly complied. The transformation back was just as disorienting as the first shift. Arya found herself on her hands and knees in the dirt, naked as the day she was born, her body trembling with exhaustion. A cloak settled around her shoulders before she could process her vulnerability. Cade wrapped her in the fabric, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. That was incredible, he said, and there was genuine pride in his voice. Most wolves take weeks to achieve their first controlled shift. You did it in under an hour. I feel like I've been trampled by a herd of horses. Arya mumbled against his chest. That's normal. The first shift drains everything. Your body needs time to adjust. He carried her toward the palace. We're done for today. You need food and rest. But you said we were training. We did train. You accomplished more this morning than I expected you to in a week. Cade's arms tightened around her. Don't diminish what you've done, Arya. You were extraordinary. The praise made something warm bloom in her chest. When was the last time someone had called her extraordinary? Had anyone ever? Subscribe if you're tired of watching wolves like Arya be told they're nothing when they're everything. Because she deserves witnesses who'll see her transform into the queen she was always meant to be. Comment. What do you think those oracle marks mean for Arya's future? Drop your theories below. Back in her chambers, Sarah was waiting with hot food and clean clothes. Cade set Arya down gently, and she realized with embarrassment that she was still wrapped in only his cloak. Sarah will help you bathe and eat, he said. Rest for the remainder of the day. Tomorrow, we'll work on controlling your shifts, and later this week, we'll begin your other lessons. Other lessons? Reading, writing, mathematics, history, pack law, diplomatic protocol. He ticked them off on his fingers. Everything a queen needs to know. That sounds like a lot, Arya said weakly. It is. But you're stronger than you think. Cade moved toward the door, then paused. Arya, I'm proud of you. I know today was terrifying. But you faced it anyway. That takes courage. He left before she could respond, and Arya stood there, clutching his cloak, her heart doing strange things in her chest. Well, Sarah said with a knowing smile. I'd say that went better than expected. Come on, let's get you cleaned up. You smell like training yard and wolf. As Sarah helped her into the bath, Arya's mind wandered back to the moment of her shift, to the feeling of her wolf finally being free, to the sensation of Cade's hand in her fur, to the pride in his voice when he'd called her extraordinary. Maybe, just maybe, she could do this. Maybe she could learn to be the queen he needed her to be. Maybe she could even learn to believe she deserved it. But as the hot water soothed her aching muscles, one thought lingered above all others. What did the oracle marks really mean? And why did she feel like they were connected to something much bigger than a simple mate bond? Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones, in the newly awakened connection to her wolf, in the way the moon goddess's blessing hummed beneath her skin. Something that would change everything. Chapter 6. Shadows of the Past. 3 days passed in a blur of exhaustion and discovery. Each morning, Arya met Kade in the training yard before dawn. They worked on her shifting, controlling the transformation, maintaining her wolf form for longer periods, and learning to communicate with her wolf as naturally as breathing. By the third day, Arya could shift in under 10 seconds and hold the form for nearly an hour before fatigue set in. Her afternoons were spent in the palace library with a tutor named Professor Aldrich, an elderly Lycan with more patience than Arya thought possible. He taught her to read beyond the basic letters she'd picked up over the years, introduced her to mathematics that made her head spin, and lectured on the complex history of the Lycan kingdom. Evenings belonged to Sarah, who coached her on etiquette, proper forms of address, and the intricate dance of court politics. Arya learned which fork to use, how to curtsy to visiting dignitaries, and the subtle art of conversation that said much while revealing nothing. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and strangely fulfilling. But on the fourth morning, everything changed. Arya arrived at the training yard to find Cade wasn't alone. 3 other Lycans stood with him, 2 males and 1 female, all radiating the kind of power that made Arya's newly awakened instincts scream to submit. "Good morning," Cade greeted her, his expression unreadable. "I want you to meet my inner circle. These are the wolves I trust most in this kingdom." The tallest male stepped forward, first a mountain of muscle with dark skin and warm brown eyes that contrasted with his intimidating size. "I'm Darius, head of the King's Guard. It's an honor to meet our future queen." "The honor is mine," Arya said, grateful that Sarah's lessons kicked in automatically. The second male was leaner, with auburn hair and sharp green eyes that assessed her with uncomfortable intensity. "Rowan, I handle intelligence and security. Welcome to the palace, Lady Arya." The female was last, and the most striking. She had midnight black hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, violet eyes that seemed to see straight through Arya's defenses, and an air of authority that rivaled Cade's own. When she smiled, it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Lyanna," she introduced herself, her voice like honey over steel. "I'm the King's chief advisor and the captain of the Royal Guard. I hope you're settling in well." Something about Lyanna made Arya's wolf bristle with unease, but she pushed the feeling down. "Everyone has been very welcoming. Thank you. We're here today," Cade said, drawing their attention back to him, because Arya needs to understand pack dynamics beyond what she learned in Shadowmoon, and the best way to learn is through experience. Arya's stomach dropped. "What kind of experience?" "A challenge." Cade's smile was predatory. "You're going to spar with each of them." "Spar?" Arya's voice rose an octave. "I barely know how to shift. I can't fight trained warriors." "You won't be fighting to win," Cade clarified. "You'll be fighting to survive. There's a difference. In wolf form, they're going to come at you not at full strength, but enough to push you. Your job is to evade, defend, and use your Omega abilities to your advantage." "What Omega abilities?" "I don't even know what those are yet." "Then today you'll discover them." Cade's tone left no room for argument. "Shift." Arya wanted to protest further, but the command in his voice bypassed her conscious mind. Within seconds, she stood on 4 legs, her white fur bristling with anxiety. Darius shifted next, a massive gray wolf whose size made Arya look like a pup in comparison. Then Rowan, sleek and tawny. Finally Lyanna, whose black wolf was only slightly smaller than Darius but radiated twice the menace. "Rules are simple," Cade's voice carried across the yard. He remained in human form, watching from the sidelines. "You have 5 minutes to survive against each of them. Use whatever means necessary. Begin." Darius moved first. He was faster than something his size had any right to be. Arya barely dodged his initial charge, rolling to the side as his jaws snapped where her throat had been a second before. She scrambled backward, her heart hammering, her wolf whimpering with fear. Too fast. He was too fast and too strong, and she was going to die. "Stop thinking!" Cade's shout cut through her panic. "Feel. What does your wolf want to do?" Arya didn't have time to think about the question. Darius was coming at her again, and pure instinct took over. Instead of trying to fight or flee, Arya dropped low to the ground, bared her throat in submission, and sent out a wave of emotion she didn't know she was capable of producing. "Please, I don't want to fight. I'm not a threat. Please stop." Darius stumbled mid-charge, his massive body skidding to a halt just inches from her. He shook his head as if trying to clear it, confusion evident in his wolf's eyes. Interesting, Cade murmured. Again, Darius. Don't let her emotions affect you this time. But they did. Every time Darius charged, Arya instinctively sent out waves of emotion, fear, pleading, submission, and every time, the huge warrior faltered. Not stopped completely, but slowed enough that Arya could dodge, could survive. By the time the 5 minutes ended, Arya was panting and exhausted, but she was unharmed. Remarkable, Darius said after shifting back to human form. He pulled on the pants he'd left at the edge of the yard, his expression respectful. I've never felt anything like that. It was like I could feel what you were feeling. Made it almost impossible to attack. That's empathic projection, Cade explained, pride evident in his voice. One of the rarest Omega abilities. You're not just feeling others' emotions, you're making them feel yours. It's a defense mechanism. Against most wolves, it would stop an attack completely. Most wolves? Arya shifted back, grateful when Sarah appeared with a robe. What about the ones it doesn't stop? Lycans with strong mental shields, alphas with dominant wills, and wolves who've been trained to resist emotional manipulation. Cade gestured to Rowan. Which brings us to round 2. Rowan, you're up. Rowan was a different kind of nightmare. Where Darius had been powerful and straightforward, Rowan was cunning and unpredictable. He didn't charge head-on. Instead, he circled, feinted, attacked from angles Arya didn't expect, and when she tried her empathic projection, he shrugged it off like water off a duck's back. He's had mental training, Cade called out. Your emotions won't work on him. Try something else. But Arya didn't know what else to try. She was too busy trying not to get caught by Rowan's snapping jaws, too focused on survival to think strategically. By the time the 5 minutes ended, she had several scratches and was limping slightly. Better, Cade said as healers rushed forward to tend her wounds. You lasted the full 5 minutes against a trained intelligence operative. That's impressive for someone who'd never fought before this week. I feel like I got mauled, Arya panted. Scratches. They'll heal in hours. Cade's hand settled on her shoulder, and warmth spread from his touch. One more round. Are you ready? No. She absolutely was not ready, but she nodded anyway. Lyanna's smile as she shifted was anything but friendly. The black wolf moved like liquid shadow, fast and graceful and utterly merciless. Unlike Darius, who'd pulled his punches, and Rowan, who'd tested her defenses, Lyanna seemed intent on proving a point. Within 30 seconds, Arya was pinned beneath the larger wolf, jaws around her throat in a hold that would have been fatal if Lyanna had applied any real pressure. Enough, Cade's voice cracked like a whip. Lyanna released her immediately, stepping back and shifting to human form with a fluid grace that made Arya feel clumsy and inadequate. Apologies, Your Majesty, Lyanna said, not sounding sorry at all. I thought you wanted us to push her. Push, not dominate. Cade's eyes had taken on a dangerous silver glow. There's a difference. Of course, Lyanna bowed her head, but Arya caught the flash of something in those violet eyes. Resentment? Anger? I merely wanted our future queen to understand what real combat feels like. Arya shifted back, her throat bruised where Lyanna's jaws had clamped down. The healer tried to approach, but Arya waved her off. The injury was already healing slower than it would for a full Lycan, but faster than it would have a few days ago. I think that's enough for today, Darius said, shooting Lyanna a look that clearly said they would be having words later. Lady Arya, you did well, better than most would have in your position. He's right, Rowan agreed. That empathic projection, if you learn to control it, you'll be formidable. Most wolves won't be able to touch you. Thank you, Arya managed, though her confidence was thoroughly shaken. As the others departed, Lyanna lingered. She approached Arya with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A word of advice, she said quietly, too low for Cade to hear as he spoke with Darius. Being the king's mate doesn't make you a queen. That title has to be earned. And there are many in this court who don't believe an Omega blessed or not has what it takes to rule beside the Lycan King. Is that a threat? Arya asked, meeting those violet eyes despite the fear coiling in her stomach. A warning. Lyanna's smile sharpened. This kingdom has enemies, Lady Arya. Some of them wear crowns in foreign courts. Others wear friendly faces right here in the palace. Watch your back. Not everyone is happy about your sudden elevation." She walked away before Arya could respond, leaving her standing there with ice in her veins. "What did she say to you?" Cade appeared at her side, his expression dark. "Nothing important," Arya lied, not wanting to cause problems. "Just welcoming me to court politics." Cade's eyes narrowed, clearly not believing her, but he let it go. "Come. You need to eat and rest. You've earned it." But as they walked back to the palace, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that Lyanna's warning had been more than just court intrigue. Something was wrong, something beneath the surface that she couldn't quite identify, and her newly awakened instincts were screaming that danger was coming from a direction she hadn't yet learned to watch. That evening, Arya sat in the library with Professor Aldrich, trying to focus on her reading lesson. But her mind kept drifting back to the morning's training, to Lyanna's violet eyes and veiled threats. "My lady?" Aldrich's gentle voice pulled her back. "You seem distracted. Would you like to stop for today?" "No, I'm fine. Just tired." Arya forced herself to focus on the text in front of her, a history of the Lycan Kingdom's founding. "Can I ask you something, Professor?" "Of course. What do you know about oracle marks?" Aldrich's expression grew serious. "Why do you ask?" "Because apparently, I have them. On my wolf." Arya traced the pattern absently on the page. "King Cade said his mother had them too, but no one will tell me what they actually mean." The elderly Lycan set down his teaching materials with careful deliberation. "Oracle marks are a sign of the moon goddess's direct favor. She bestows them on wolves who are meant for significant purposes. Wolves whose actions will shape the future of our kind." That's what everyone keeps saying. But what does it actually mean? What am I supposed to do? And that, my dear, is the question every oracle-marked wolf must answer for themselves. Aldrich's eyes were kind but troubled. "The last oracle-marked wolf before you was Queen Helena, King Cade's mother. She was instrumental in uniting 3 warring Lycan territories and bringing peace that lasted for decades. And then she died," Arya said quietly. "Yes, when the king was only 12. Aldrich leaned forward. "There are some who believe her death wasn't natural, despite the official reports of illness. She had enemies. Lady Arya, powerful ones who feared what she represented." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand what you're walking into." The professor's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The oracle marks make you powerful. Yes. But they also make you a target. There are forces in this world, both within the Lycan Kingdom and beyond, who fear change. Who fear what the moon goddess might be planning through you." Arya's hand moved instinctively to her throat, where Lyanna's jaws had closed earlier. "You think I'm in danger. I think you need to be very careful about who you trust." Aldrich glanced at the door, as if checking for listeners. "Not everyone in this palace wants to see you succeed as queen. Some would prefer the king remain unmated, focused only on conquest and expansion. Others have their own candidates they've been grooming for years." "Like Lyanna?" Aldrich's silence was answer enough. "She was supposed to be his queen, wasn't she?" Arya's voice was barely audible. "Before I came along. Not officially. But there were expectations. Lyanna is powerful, well-connected, and has served Cade loyally for over a decade. Many assumed that when he finally took a mate, it would be her." The revelation sat heavy in Arya's chest. No wonder Lyanna had looked at her with such barely concealed hostility. Arya hadn't just taken her position as future queen, she'd stolen what Lyanna had spent years working toward. "What should I do?" Arya asked. "Exactly what you're doing now. Learn. Grow stronger. Master your abilities." Aldrich's expression softened. "And trust your instincts. Oracle-marked wolves have guidance from the moon goddess herself. If something feels wrong, it probably is." After the lesson, Arya returned to her chambers to find an unexpected surprise waiting. A small package sat on her desk, wrapped in silver paper and tied with a black ribbon. No note. No indication of who'd sent it. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. Inside was a delicate silver chain with a pendant, a crescent moon with intricate engravings that matched the oracle marks on her wolf. It was beautiful. Exquisite. And it radiated wrongness in a way that made Arya's skin crawl. She dropped it back in the box, her heart racing. Every instinct screamed not to touch it, not to put it anywhere near her skin. "Sarah," she called out, relief flooding her when the attendant appeared. "This was left in my room. Do you know who?" Sarah's face went pale. "I don't know how that got in here. I've been outside your door all afternoon. No one entered," which was impossible. The only way into Arya's chambers was through the main door which Sarah had been guarding, or through the adjoining door to Cade's rooms. And that door was always locked from his side. "Get King Cade," Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now." Cade arrived within minutes, still dressed in his council attire, his expression darkening the moment he saw the necklace. "Don't touch it," he commanded, though Arya had no intention of doing so. He pulled out a silk cloth and wrapped the pendant carefully, his movements precise and controlled. "This is nightshade silver, poisonous to wolves. If you'd put this on, it would have burned through your skin within minutes. Someone tried to kill me." The words felt surreal. Someone got into my chambers and tried to kill me. Not kill. Harm. Cade's jaw clenched. Nightshade silver causes agony, but it's not usually fatal. This was a warning. Or a test. A test for what? To see how well you're protected, how easily you can be reached. His silver eyes blazed with fury. Which means someone in this palace wants to see you fail. Or worse. If Arya's journey moved you, subscribe, so you never miss what happens when enemies close in from all sides. Because stories like these deserve an audience that won't look away when the danger gets real. Comment. Who do you think left the poisoned necklace? Drop your theories below, Lyanna. Or someone else entirely. As Cade issued orders to triple the guards and investigate every servant with access to her chambers, Arya stood by the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens. She'd been at the palace less than a week, and already someone wanted her gone. Professor Aldrich's warning echoed in her mind. Not everyone wants to see you succeed. And as the moon rose higher in the sky, its light illuminating the oracle marks she couldn't see but could feel burning beneath her skin, Arya realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The real battle for her life, for her place beside Cade, for her right to be queen hadn't even started yet. Chapter 7. The Council's Judgment. The palace was in chaos by morning. Cade had spent the entire night interrogating guards, servants, and anyone who'd had access to the private wing. Arya watched from her window as Lycans were brought before him one by one, each subjected to his piercing gaze and questions that left no room for deception. No one confessed. No one knew anything, or at least, no one admitted to knowing anything. "You can't stay locked in your chambers forever," Sarah said gently, bringing in breakfast. "The king has requested your presence at the council meeting this morning." Arya's stomach dropped. Council meeting? The Lycan Council convenes every week to discuss kingdom matters. Sarah set down the tray, her expression sympathetic. "They've requested to meet you formally. It's tradition when a new mate is chosen. Requested or demanded. With the council, there's rarely a difference." Sarah helped Arya into a formal gown deep blue with silver embroidery that supposedly represented strength and wisdom. "Just remember what I taught you. Keep your spine straight, your voice steady, and never let them see fear." Easier said than done. The council chamber was imposing, a circular room with a domed ceiling painted with constellations that seemed to move when Arya wasn't looking directly at them. 12 high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a Lycan whose power made the air thick and heavy. Cade sat at the center in a throne-like chair, his expression carved from ice. When Arya entered, his eyes found hers immediately, and she felt the mate bond pulse with reassurance. "Counselors," Cade's voice carried through the chamber. "May I present Lady Arya Winters, my mate, and your future queen." The title hung in the air like a challenge. "Your Majesty." An elderly male Lycan spoke first, his silver hair marking him as the most senior member. "I am Counselor Thaddeus, head of this assembly. We are pleased to meet the wolf who has captured our king's attention." The pause before pleased told Arya everything she needed to know. "The honor is mine, Counselor," Arya said, falling into the formal speech patterns Sarah had drilled into her. "I hope to serve the Lycan kingdom with the same dedication you all have shown." "Serve?" A female counselor with auburn hair and calculating eyes leaned forward. "Tell me, Lady Arya, What exactly do you know about serving a kingdom? What qualifications do you bring to the role of queen? Counselor Vivian raises a valid point, another male added. You come from a minor pack with no political standing. You have no education, no training in statecraft, and by all accounts, you were a servant, until a few days ago. Arya's hands clenched at her sides, but she kept her voice level. I'm learning. King Cade has provided tutors. Tutors can teach skills. Vivian interrupted. They cannot teach bloodline. You are an Omega, Lady Arya. The lowest rank. How can you possibly command the respect of the kingdom when your own nature demands submission? That's enough. Cade's voice was lethal silk. You will address my mate with respect, Counselor Vivian, or you will find yourself removed from this council. Your Majesty, we mean no disrespect. Thaddeus held up a placating hand. But the council has concerns, legitimate concerns about the suitability of this match. The moon goddess herself declared this match, Cade said coldly. Are you questioning her wisdom? Of course not. But tradition dictates that a Lycan King's mate must demonstrate certain qualities before being formally recognized as queen. Strength. Leadership. The ability to command and be obeyed. Thaddeus's eyes shifted to Arya. Perhaps a trial would be appropriate. A way for Lady Arya to prove her worth. Arya's blood ran cold. What kind of trial? A simple test of character and ability, another counselor suggested. Something that would demonstrate to the kingdom that you possess the qualities necessary to stand beside our king. She doesn't need to prove anything. Cade growled. With respect, Your Majesty, she does. Vivian stood, her voice carrying authority. The kingdom is already whispering. An unknown Omega suddenly elevated to queen. Without proving herself? It breeds discontent. Rebellion. We've seen it before. You're talking about my mother. Cade's tone could have frozen fire. Queen Helena was oracle-marked, and still faced challenges to her authority, Thaddeus said carefully. Until she completed the queen's trial and proved her worth. It's tradition. Your Majesty. One that even you cannot circumvent. Arya watched the muscle in Cade's jaw tick. He was furious, she could feel it through the mate bond, a roiling storm of anger and protectiveness. But she also sensed his frustration, because the council was right. Tradition was sacred among Lycans, and breaking it would undermine his own authority. What does this trial involve? Arya asked quietly. Every head turned toward her. Cade's expression was stormy, warning her not to engage. But if she was going to be queen, she couldn't hide behind him every time someone questioned her right to the position. 3 challenges, Thaddeus explained. The first tests wisdom, your ability to make difficult decisions for the good of the kingdom. The second tests courage, your willingness to face danger without hesitation. The third tests leadership, your capacity to command respect and inspire loyalty. And if I fail, then the mate bond remains, but you will not be recognized as queen, Vivian said, her tone suggesting she expected exactly that outcome. You would simply be the king's companion. The insult was clear. Heat flushed Arya's cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. When would this trial take place? Arya, you don't have to do this, Cade said, his hand reaching for hers. I can overrule the council, and weaken your own position. Arya finished. She squeezed his hand, drawing strength from the contact. They're right. The kingdom needs to see that I'm more than just your mate. I need to see it too. Pride flickered in Cade's eyes, mixed with concern. You've barely had a week to adjust. This is too soon. It will always be too soon, Arya said softly. Better to face it now than let the whispers and doubts fester. Thaddeus nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true queen. The trial will begin in 3 days. That gives you time to prepare. 3 days? Cade's anger sparked again. That's hardly. 3 days is more than fair, Your Majesty. Vivian interrupted. Your mother had only 2 days' notice when she underwent her trial. The mention of his mother was clearly meant to manipulate him, and Arya watched Cade struggle between his protective instincts and the political reality. Finally, he nodded once, sharp and angry. Fine, 3 days. But know this, counselors, if any of you interfere with her preparation or sabotage the trial in any way, you will answer to me personally. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Your Majesty, Thaddeus said. The meeting dissolved, counselors filing out with expressions ranging from satisfaction to concern. Liana was among them, and as she passed Arya, she leaned in close enough to whisper, "Good luck with the trial, you'll need it." When they were finally alone, Cade pulled Arya against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with fierce protectiveness. "You didn't have to agree to this," he said into her hair. "I could have fought them. And spent years dealing with a divided council and a skeptical kingdom?" Arya pulled back to look at him. "No. This way, if I succeed, no one can question my right to be here, and if I fail, you won't fail." His hands cupped her face. "But these trials, they're not easy, Arya. My mother nearly died during hers. The council designs them to push candidates to their absolute limits. Then I'll just have to survive." She tried to sound more confident than she felt. "You said I was stronger than I think. Time to prove it." Cade's expression was torn between admiration and fear. "I can't lose you. Not when I just found you." The raw emotion in his voice made Arya's chest tighten. In just 1 week, this male had gone from terrifying stranger to… what? Protector? Teacher? Something more? "You won't lose me," she promised, even though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. The next 3 days were the most intense of Arya's life. Cade pushed her training to the limit, working with her from dawn until long past dark. They focused on her empathic abilities, discovering that she could do more than just project emotions. She could sense them in others, feel the truth beneath their words, and even influence their emotional states if she concentrated hard enough. "It's like emotional manipulation," Arya said after successfully calming an aggressive wolf during a training exercise. "That seems… wrong." "It's a tool," Cade corrected. "Like any weapon, it can be used for good or ill. A queen needs every advantage she can get." Professor Aldrich drilled her on kingdom history and law, testing her ability to recall complex information under pressure. Sarah coached her on public speaking and commanding presence. Even Darius and Rowan contributed, sparring with her to build her confidence in combat situations. The only one who didn't help was Liana. Arya barely saw the advisor, but when she did, those violet eyes held promises of challenges to come. On the eve of the trial, Arya stood in her chambers, staring at her reflection. The wolf looking back at her was different from the broken Omega who'd scrubbed floors in the Shadowmoon packhouse. Her eyes held determination instead of defeat. Her posture radiated strength instead of submission. But was it enough? A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Cade entered, and in his hands was a package wrapped in midnight blue cloth. "I have something for you." He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a dagger with a silver blade etched with the same runic symbols that marked his skin. The handle was wrapped in leather, perfectly balanced for her grip. "Every Lycan queen carries a ceremonial blade," Cade explained, placing it in her hands. "This one belonged to my mother. I want you to have it." Arya's fingers closed around the handle, feeling the weight of history and expectation. "Cade, I can't. This should be saved for someone who… what? Who deserves it more than my mate?" He covered her hand with his. "You deserve this, Arya. You deserve everything I can give you. I just wish I could give you an easier path." "If it were easy, it wouldn't mean anything." Arya met his silver gaze. "Thank you. For the dagger. For believing in me. For everything. I should be thanking you." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You could have refused the trial. Could have hidden behind me and let the council grumble. Instead, you're facing this head on, even though you're terrified." "How do you know I'm terrified?" "Because I can feel it through our bond. And because only a fool wouldn't be terrified." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "But you're doing it anyway. That's what courage is, Arya. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it." They stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other's presence. When Cade finally pulled away, his expression had shifted to something Arya couldn't quite read. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. "About the trial. The council will try to use your past against you. Your time in Shadowmoon. Your treatment as an Omega. They'll try to break you emotionally, Make you doubt yourself. Let them try. Arya's grip tightened on the dagger. I survived 19 years of that. I can survive 3 more challenges. Pride blazed in Cade's eyes. That's my queen. The words sent warmth flooding through her chest. Not my mate or my omega. My queen. Like he already believed she'd succeeded. Get some rest, Cade said, moving toward the door. Tomorrow will be the hardest day of your life. You'll need your strength. Cade? He paused at the threshold. What was your mother's trial like? His expression darkened with old pain. The first challenge. She had to choose which village to save during a drought, her birth village or her mate village. She chose neither. Instead, she found a third option no one had considered. The second challenge pitted her against an alpha who'd been terrorizing border towns. She defeated him not through combat, but by exposing his crimes to his own pack and turning them against him. The third, Arya prompted when he fell silent. The third nearly killed her. But she survived. And she proved that Oracle-marked wolves don't play by the same rules as everyone else. His smile was sad. I hope you remember that tomorrow. When they try to force you into impossible choices, remember that sometimes the right answer is to break the rules entirely. He left her with that cryptic advice, and Arya spent the night alternating between sleep and anxious wakefulness. When dawn finally came, she dressed in the ceremonial white, worn by all trial candidates. She strapped her mother-in-law's dagger to her thigh, hidden beneath the flowing fabric. She braided her hair in the traditional queen's plait that Sarah taught her, and she walked to the trial grounds with her head held high, ready to prove that an Omega could be a queen, ready to show the Lycan kingdom and herself that she was more than the labels they'd given her, ready to face whatever challenges the council threw at her and emerge victorious. Already trying, because failure was no longer an option. Not when she'd finally found a place where she might belong. Not when she'd finally found someone who believed she was worth fighting for. Not when she'd finally started believing it herself. The trial grounds were filled with Lycans from across the kingdom, all gathered to watch the Omega try to become their queen. Arya could feel their skepticism, their doubt, their curiosity, but beneath it all, she felt something else. Hope. From the servants who'd been kind to her, from Sira, standing in the crowd with tears in her eyes, from Darius and Rowan, who nodded their encouragement, and most of all, from Cade, whose silver eyes promised that no matter what happened today, she wouldn't face it alone. The council assembled on a raised platform. Thaddeus stepped forward, his voice magically amplified to reach the entire crowd. Let the Queen's trial begin. Chapter 8. The Trial of Wisdom. The crowd fell silent as Counselor Thaddeus raised his hand. The first trial tests wisdom. His voice echoed across the grounds. A queen must make decisions that affect thousands of lives. She must choose between competing needs, weigh justice against mercy, and sometimes sacrifice the few for the many. Lady Arya Winters, step forward. Arya moved to the center of the trial grounds, her heart hammering but her steps steady. The white ceremonial dress flowed around her, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. Every eye in the kingdom was on her, judging, waiting for her to fail. Through the mate bond, she felt Cade's steady presence, an anchor in the storm of her anxiety. Before you stand 3 wolves, Thaddeus continued, gesturing to where 3 figures were brought forward in chains. Each has committed a crime against the kingdom. Each awaits judgment. You will hear their cases and decide their fates. Choose wisely, for your decisions will reveal the kind of queen you would become. The first prisoner was brought forward, a young male, barely past his first shift, with haunted eyes and trembling hands. The guard forced him to his knees before Arya. This is Finn, Counselor Vivian announced, her voice cold. 3 days ago, he stole food from the royal storehouse. The penalty for theft from the crown is death by execution. What is your judgment? Arya's breath caught. Death? For stealing food? She looked at the boy. He couldn't be more than 16 and saw the desperation in his gaunt face, the way his ribs showed through his thin shirt. Why did you steal? She asked quietly. My lady, the trial requires judgment, not interrogation, Vivian interjected. I'm making an informed decision, Arya said firmly, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. Answer me, Finn. Why did you steal from the crown? The boy's voice was barely a whisper. My sister. She's only 8. She was starving. Our parents died last winter, and I couldn't find work. I tried everything, my lady. I swear I did. But she was wasting away, and His voice broke. I couldn't let her die. Arya felt his truth through her empathic senses. Every word was genuine, every emotion raw and honest. This wasn't a hardened criminal. This was a desperate child trying to save his sibling. The law is clear, Thaddeus said. Theft from the crown is punishable by death. Will you uphold the law? Or show weakness in your first judgment? It was a trap. Arya could see it clearly now. Show mercy, and they'd call her soft, unfit to make hard decisions. Uphold the harsh sentence, and she'd be seen as cruel, willing to kill a child for trying to save his sister. But Cade's words from last night echoed in her mind. Sometimes the right answer is to break the rules entirely. I find Finn guilty of theft, Arya announced, and felt the crowd's satisfaction. Then she continued. However, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. A child stealing food to feed his starving sister isn't a criminal, he's a victim of a broken system. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vivian's eyes narrowed. The law doesn't account for, then the law needs to change. Arya interrupted, her voice growing stronger. My judgment is this. Finn will serve the crown, but not through death. He'll work in the royal kitchens for 1 year, learning a trade that will allow him to provide for his sister honorably. His sister will be placed in the palace school, given an education and proper meals, and I will personally review the kingdom's welfare system to ensure no other child faces starvation, while the royal storehouse sits full. Silence stretched across the grounds. Arya held her breath, wondering if she'd just failed spectacularly. Then Cade's voice cut through the quiet. A wise judgment. One that serves both justice and mercy. I approve. The crowd erupted in whispers, some approving, others skeptical. But Arya saw Thaddeus nod slowly, something that might have been respect flickering in his ancient eyes. The first judgment is accepted, he announced. Bring forward the second prisoner. This one was a female warrior, tall and scarred, with defiant eyes that met Arya's without flinching. Blood still stained her armor. This is Captain Mira. Another counselor spoke. She disobeyed a direct order from her commanding officer during a border skirmish. Her insubordination resulted in the death of 3 soldiers under her command. The penalty for insubordination resulting in death is execution. What is your judgment? Arya studied the captain, reaching out with her empathic senses. What she felt made her pause, not guilt, but righteous conviction, anger at injustice, grief for the fallen, but no regret for her choice. What was the order you disobeyed? Arya asked. I was ordered to abandon a village to enemy raiders, Mira said, her voice steady despite her chains. Women and children would have been slaughtered. My commanding officer said they were acceptable losses to preserve our strategic position, and instead, I took my unit and defended the village. We saved over 100 civilians, but 3 of my soldiers died in the fighting. Mira's jaw clenched. I would make the same choice again, even knowing the penalty. Arya pressed. 100 lives for 3? Mira's eyes blazed. Yes, every time. That's what being a soldier means, protecting those who can't protect themselves. Arya felt the truth of it resonating through the mate bond. She glanced at Cade, saw the tight set of his jaw, and understood. This trial wasn't just testing her, it was exposing problems in the kingdom that needed addressing. Who was your commanding officer? Arya asked. That's irrelevant to the judgment, Vivian said quickly. Too quickly. I disagree. Arya turned to face the council. Captain Mira saved 100 innocent lives at great personal risk. Her soldiers died as heroes, protecting the weak. The only crime I see is that she was ordered to abandon civilians in the first place. Who gave that order? Commander Baltic, Mira said before anyone could stop her. Counselor Vivian's son. The pieces fell into place. This wasn't about justice, it was about protecting a counselor's family from consequences. They'd expected Arya to simply uphold the sentence, to execute a hero to cover up corruption. My judgment, Arya said clearly, is that Captain Mira is not guilty. She acted with courage and honor, upholding the true duty of a Lycan warrior. The 3 soldiers who died will be honored as heroes, and Commander Baltrick will be investigated for his order to abandon civilians. If he's found guilty of dereliction of duty, he will face appropriate punishment. You cannot. Vivian started to rise. I can, and I will. Arya's voice rang with authority she didn't know she possessed. A queen's duty is to protect all citizens of the kingdom, not to shield the powerful from their crimes. Or would you argue otherwise, counselor? Vivian's mouth snapped shut, her face flushed with rage. But she couldn't argue without admitting her son's guilt. Cade stood from his throne, his smile sharp and proud. Another wise judgment. Captain Mira is hereby pardoned and reinstated with honors. Commander Baltrick will report for investigation immediately. The crowd's reaction was louder this time, more approving than skeptical. Arya felt a surge of hope. The second judgment is accepted, Thaddeus announced, though his expression was harder to read now. Bring forward the final prisoner. The third prisoner made Arya's blood run cold. It was Alpha Thorn from Shadowmoon Pack. He was bound in silver chains that burned his skin, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. When his eyes met Arya's, the hatred in them was palpable. This is Alpha Thorn of Shadowmoon Pack, Thaddeus said, and Arya noticed the slight emphasis on his former title. He stands accused of conspiracy against the crown. Evidence suggests he planned to assassinate you, Lady Arya, and claim it was the work of rival packs to incite war. The penalty for conspiracy against the crown is death by silver. What is your judgment? Arya's world tilted. Thorn had tried to have her killed? The necklace, the poisoned nightshade silver, had it come from him? You worthless Omega. Thorn spat, his voice thick with venom. You think you can judge me? You're nothing. Less than nothing. I should have killed you years ago when I had the chance. Silence. Cade's command cracked like a whip. You will address your queen with respect, or I will remove your tongue. Queen? Thorn laughed bitterly. She's a servant playing dress-up, a wolfless nobody who got lucky with a mate bond. When the kingdom realizes what she really is, they'll tear her apart. Every word was designed to wound, to make Arya doubt herself, to drag her back to the frightened Omega who'd scrubbed floors. She felt her hands trembling, felt the old fear trying to claw its way back. But then she felt something else. Through the mate bond, Cade's absolute faith in her. Through the crowd. Hope from wolves who wanted to believe an Omega could be more. And deep inside herself, from her oracle-marked wolf, a certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. You're right about one thing, Arya said quietly, and the crowd hushed to hear her. I was a servant, wolfless. Nobody. You made sure of that, didn't you, Alpha Thorn? For 19 years, you beat me down, humiliated me, made me believe I was worthless. Why? Because you were worthless, Thorn sneered. No. Arya stepped closer, her empathic senses reaching out, diving deep into the emotions roiling beneath his anger. And there, buried under years of rage and fear, she found the truth. You were afraid of me. Even before my wolf emerged, you sensed something in me that threatened you. That's why you kept me suppressed. That's why you treated me worse than any other Omega in the history of your pack. Lies. The empathic abilities are already manifesting, Arya continued, speaking to the crowd now as much as to Thorn. I can feel your fear. You knew that if my wolf ever emerged, if I ever realized my true nature, I would expose everything you'd hidden, the corruption in your pack, the abuse, the violations of pack law that you covered up for years. Proof, Vivian demanded, though she looked uneasy now. Do you have proof of these accusations? Arya turned to Cade. When you questioned the servants yesterday about the poisoned necklace, did any mention connections to Shadowmoon Pack? 2, Cade confirmed. Both had received payments from an account traced back to Alpha Thorn. The crowd erupted in outrage. Thorn had tried to kill her, not just any wolf, but the king's mate. That was treason of the highest order. My judgment, Arya said, her voice cutting through the noise, is that Alpha Thorn is guilty. But death is too quick for him, too merciful. She met his eyes, and this time, she didn't flinch. He will be stripped of his title and rank. He will serve the remainder of his life in the work camps, performing the same servant duties he forced on me and countless others. Let him learn what it means to be powerless. Let him understand the suffering he inflicted. You can't do this. Thorn lunged forward, held back by guards. I'm an alpha. You can't. You were an alpha, Arya corrected. Now you're nothing, less than nothing. And you'll spend the rest of your life remembering that you were brought down by the Omega you tried to break. The crowd's roar of approval was deafening. Arya felt the validation like sunshine after years of darkness. She'd done it. She'd passed the first trial. The third judgment is accepted, Thaddeus announced, and this time, there was definite respect in his voice. Lady Arya has completed the trial of wisdom. She has shown the ability to balance mercy with justice, to see beyond surface accusations to deeper truths, and to make difficult decisions without hesitation. Subscribe if you believe wolves like Arya deserve to rise above their past and claim the power they were always meant to hold, because this is just the beginning of her transformation. Comment. What do you think the next trial will test? Drop your predictions below. Cade descended from his throne and crossed to her, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the fierce pride blazing in his eyes. You were magnificent, he said softly, for her ears alone. My mother would have been proud. The words made Arya's eyes burn with unshed tears. She'd done it. The first trial was complete, and she'd done it her way, not by following the expected path, but by forging a new one. 1 down, she whispered. 2 to go. 2 to go. Cade agreed. But after today, the kingdom knows what I've known since the moment I met you. You're not just my mate, Arya. You're going to be the greatest queen the Lycan kingdom has ever seen. As the crowd continued to celebrate, as guards dragged Thorn away screaming threats that no longer held any power, Arya felt something shift inside her. She was no longer the broken Omega from Shadowmoon Pack. She was Arya Winters, mate to the Lycan King, bearer of oracle marks, and future queen. And she was just getting started. But as she caught Lyanna's expression across the grounds, those violet eyes cold with calculation, Arya knew the hardest challenges were still ahead. The trial of wisdom was complete. Tomorrow would bring the trial of courage, and something told Arya that wisdom alone wouldn't be enough to survive what came next. Chapter 9. The Trial of Courage. Arya spent the night unable to sleep. The trial of wisdom had drained her emotionally more than physically, but her mind wouldn't quiet. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Thorn's face twisted with hatred, heard the crowd's roar of approval, felt the weight of making decisions that affected lives. She'd passed the first trial. But at what cost? You're thinking too much again. Cade's voice came from the doorway connecting their chambers. He stood silhouetted by moonlight, wearing only sleep pants, his expression concerned. I can feel your anxiety through the bond. May I come in? Arya nodded, and he crossed the room to sit on the edge of her bed. His presence was immediately calming, the mate bond humming with contentment at his proximity. I keep wondering if I made the right choices, Arya admitted. What if Finn can't adjust to palace life? What if Captain Mira's investigation causes problems in the military? What if you made the best decisions you could with the information you had? Cade interrupted gently. That's all any ruler can do, Arya. Second-guessing every choice will drive you mad. Is that what happened to your mother? The question slipped out before Arya could stop it. Did the weight of ruling break her? Cade's expression darkened with old pain. No, what broke my mother was betrayal. She made enemies by being a good queen, by standing up for the powerless, by challenging corrupt traditions, by refusing to let the council bully her into submission. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind Arya's ear. She was murdered, Arya. The illness story was a cover-up, and I've spent 20 years trying to find out who ordered it. The revelation hit Arya like a physical blow. Does the council know? Some suspect. Others were probably involved. His jaw clenched. That's why they're testing you so hard. They want to see if you'll be like her, a queen who threatens their power, or if you'll be someone they can control. I won't be controlled, Arya said firmly. Not anymore. I know. That's what scares them. Cade's thumb brushed across her cheek. It's also what makes you perfect for this role. You've lived as the powerless. You understand their struggles in ways no other queen could. That's your strength, Arya. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Cade spoke again. Tomorrow's trial will be different. The trial of courage tests your physical bravery, your willingness to face danger for the kingdom. It's traditionally the most dangerous of the three. What happened during your mother's trial of courage? She was sent into the Deadlands territory overrun by rogues and cursed by dark magic. Her task was to retrieve an artifact that had been stolen from the kingdom. She came back with the artifact, 3 new scars, and a pack of reformed rogues who swore loyalty to her. Cade's smile was sad. She turned enemies into allies. That was her gift. I don't have that gift, Arya said quietly. I can barely control my own wolf, let alone influence others to follow me. You influenced an entire crowd today. You made them see past your rank to your character. Cade's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Trust yourself, Arya. Your instincts have kept you alive for 19 years in a pack that wanted you broken. Trust them now. He stayed with her until she finally fell asleep, his presence a shield against the nightmares that tried to surface. Dawn came too quickly. Arya, dressed in leather armor that Sarah had prepared, flexible enough for movement but reinforced at vital points. The ceremonial dagger Cade had given her was strapped to her thigh, its weight a comfort. Her hair was braided back in a warrior style, keeping it out of her face. She looked like someone heading into battle. She felt like prey walking into a trap. The trial grounds had been transformed overnight. Where yesterday there had been an open space, now stood the entrance to what looked like a massive stone labyrinth. Dark magic pulsed from it. Arya could feel it even from a distance, making her skin crawl and her wolf whimper with unease. The Phantom Maze, Cade explained as they walked toward it together. It was created centuries ago as a training ground for elite warriors. It reads your deepest fears and manifests them as physical obstacles. So, I'll be facing my own nightmares? Arya's voice was steadier than she felt, in a manner of speaking. But the maze also tests problem-solving, combat ability, and endurance. Most candidates take 6 to 8 hours to complete it. He paused. My mother took 12. She nearly died 3 times. Encouraging, Arya muttered. The crowd was even larger today. Word had spread about yesterday's trial, and wolves had traveled from across the kingdom to witness the Omega who defied expectations. Arya could feel their mixed emotions: hope, skepticism, curiosity, and in some cases, outright hostility. Counselor Thaddeus stood at the maze entrance, his expression grave. Lady Arya Winters, the trial of courage will test your ability to face danger without fleeing, to protect the kingdom even at risk to yourself, and to overcome fear through action rather than words. I understand, Arya said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. The rules are simple. Enter the maze, reach the center, retrieve the crown of stars, and return alive. You may use any skills or abilities at your disposal. You may not receive outside help. Do you accept these terms? I accept. Then let the trial of courage begin. The maze entrance yawned before her like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. Arya felt Cade's hand on her shoulder, grounding her one last time. Remember, he said softly. Fear is just information. It tells you where the danger is. Don't let it paralyze you. Use it. Arya nodded, stepped forward, and entered the darkness. The temperature dropped immediately. The stone walls on either side pulsed with that sickening dark magic, and the path ahead twisted out of sight. Arya's enhanced wolf senses picked up dozens of scents: blood, decay, fear, and something else. Something wrong. Her first instinct was to shift, to let her wolf's superior senses guide her. But as she reached for the transformation, she felt the maze resist. Her wolf whimpered and retreated, unable to emerge. The maze had blocked her shift. Of course it did, Arya muttered. That would be too easy. She drew the ceremonial dagger and moved forward cautiously, every sense on high alert. The corridor branched ahead, left or right. Both paths looked identical. Both radiated the same wrongness. Arya closed her eyes and reached out with her empathic senses. Left felt like crushing despair. Right felt like burning rage. Neither was appealing, but rage she could work with. Despair would drown her. She took the right path. The corridor opened into a circular chamber, and Arya's blood ran cold. Standing in the center was Celine Blackwater from Shadow Moon Pack, the she-wolf who'd tormented her for years. But something was wrong. Celine's eyes glowed with unnatural red light, and dark veins spread across her skin like cracks in porcelain. Well, Celine's voice echoed strangely. If it isn't the pathetic little Omega, did you really think you could escape me? Escape what you are? Arya's rational mind knew this wasn't real, just a manifestation of her fears. But her body reacted anyway. Muscles tensing, heart racing, old terror flooding her system. You're not real, Arya said, gripping the dagger tighter. Does it matter? Celine laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Real or not, I'm the voice in your head that tells you you're worthless, that you don't belong, that you'll never be anything more than the Omega who scrubbed floors. Phantom Celine lunged forward with inhuman speed. Arya barely dodged, the creature's claws missing her throat by inches. She rolled, came up in a defensive stance that Darius had drilled into her during training. You can't fight what you are, Celine taunted, circling. You can wear fancy dresses and train with the king, but underneath, you're still the broken little wolf who let me pour wine on the floor and thanked me for the privilege. Each word was a weapon aimed at Arya's deepest insecurities. And the worst part? They were working. Doubt crept in, making her movements sluggish, her resolve waver. Then she remembered Cade's words from the first trial. Sometimes the right answer is to break the rules entirely. You're right, Arya said, and Celine paused, confusion flickering across her phantom features. I was that wolf. I was broken. I did let you treat me like dirt. But that doesn't mean I am that wolf anymore. Arya reached deep inside herself, past the fear and doubt, to the place where her oracle-marked wolf lived. Even though the maze blocked her shift, she could still access her empathic abilities. She pushed outward with everything she had, not projecting fear or submission, but acceptance. I was broken. I survived. I'm stronger for it. The phantom Celine shrieked and dissolved into smoke. The chamber door opened, revealing another corridor. Arya moved forward, her confidence growing. She understood the maze now. It would throw her fears at her, try to make her doubt herself. But fears only had power if you ran from them. If you faced them, accepted them, they couldn't hurt you. The next chamber contained a twisted version of Thorn, then a phantom of her own mother, the one who died when Arya was young, leaving her alone in a pack that saw her as burden. Each manifestation tried to break her with words, with guilt, with shame. Arya faced each one the same way, acknowledging the truth in their words, while refusing to let it define her. Then she entered a chamber that made her freeze. It was empty, except for a mirror. Arya approached cautiously, and her reflection stared back. But as she watched, the reflection began to change. Her white wolf fur turned gray, then black. Her amber eyes became red. Oracle marks twisted into something dark and wrong. This is what you'll become, the reflection said in her own voice. The power will corrupt you. The oracle marks will twist you. You'll end up just like all the others who had too much power, too fast, a monster who destroys everything she touches. This fear was different, more insidious. Because part of Arya believed it. She'd seen what power did to wolves like Thorn, like the counselors who schemed and plotted. What if she became like them? What if the oracle marks weren't a blessing but a curse waiting to activate? I might, Arya said to her reflection. Power does corrupt. I've seen it happen. The reflection smiled cruelly. Then why continue? Why risk becoming a monster? Because the alternative is to stay powerless, and I've lived that life. Arya pressed her hand against the mirror. I'd rather risk corruption while trying to do good than guarantee I do nothing by staying weak. At least if I fail, I'll fail trying to help people like Finn, like Captain Mira, like every wolf who's been crushed by those in power. Noble words, but you don't believe them. I'm learning to. Arya's hand tightened on the dagger. And that's enough. The mirror shattered. Beyond it, Arya saw light, the center of the maze. She ran toward it, bursting into a circular chamber lit by an opening far above. In the center, suspended in the air by magic, floated a crown made of what looked like crystallized starlight. The crown of stars. Arya reached for it, and the ground beneath her feet erupted. A creature pulled itself from the stone, massive, reptilian, covered in scales that shimmered like oil. Its eyes were empty voids, and when it opened its mouth, Arya saw rows upon rows of teeth. A fear demon. The maze's final guardian. It didn't speak, didn't taunt, just lunged with killing intent. Arya dove to the side, her mind racing. She couldn't shift. Her dagger would be useless against those scales. Her empathic abilities wouldn't work on a magical construct. She was outmatched. The demon's tail whipped around, catching her in the ribs and sending her flying across the chamber. Arya felt something crack, pain exploding through her side. She struggled to her feet, tasting blood. The demon advanced slowly, savoring her fear. And in that moment, Arya understood. The maze fed on fear. The demon was made of fear. It grew stronger the more afraid she became. So she stopped being afraid. It wasn't about denying the fear or pushing it down. It was about accepting it, feeling it fully, and choosing to act anyway. Arya stood, ignoring the pain in her ribs, and walked toward the demon. It paused, confused. Arya kept walking, her empathic senses wide open, broadcasting one simple emotion: courage. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. The demon shrieked and lunged. Arya didn't dodge. Instead, she dropped to her knees and drove her dagger into the stone floor, channeling every bit of her oracle-blessed energy into the blade. The runes on the dagger flared to life, and a pulse of silver light exploded outward. The demon dissolved like smoke in wind. The crown of stars fell from its magical suspension, and Arya caught it, her hands trembling. She'd done it. She'd faced her fears, survived the maze, and claimed the crown. Now she just had to make it back out alive. Chapter 9. The Trial of Courage. Part 2. The crown of stars pulsed with warmth in Arya's hands, its light pushing back the darkness of the maze. But her relief was short-lived. The chamber began to tremble, and the walls started closing in. The maze wasn't done with her yet. Arya clutched the crown to her chest and ran back toward the entrance she'd come through. But the corridor had changed. Where there had been one path, now there were three, each twisting into shadow. The maze was reconfiguring itself, trying to trap her inside. Her ribs screamed with every breath, definitely cracked from the demon's tail strike. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow, and exhaustion pulled at her limbs. But she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. She chose the middle path on instinct and ran. The corridor twisted and turned, sometimes splitting, sometimes looping back on itself. Arya's wolf senses were still suppressed, leaving her with only human intuition to guide her. She tried to remember the path she'd taken inward, but the maze had shifted everything. A sound behind her made her freeze footsteps, heavy, multiple sets. Arya ducked into a side alcove just as three armored figures marched past. They weren't quite solid phantoms like the fear manifestations she'd faced earlier, but these moved with military precision, searching for something. Searching for her. She waited until they passed, then continued in the opposite direction, moving as quietly as possible despite her injuries. The crown's light was a beacon, impossible to hide completely. She tucked it under her armor, muffling its glow as best she could. Another chamber opened before her, and Arya's heart sank. It was the same circular room where she'd fought Phantom Selene. She'd gone in a circle. "No," she whispered, panic rising. "No, no, no." She forced herself to breathe, to think. The maze fed on fear and confusion. If she let it sense her panic, it would keep her trapped forever. She needed to find a different approach. Arya closed her eyes and reached inward, connecting with her oracle-marked wolf, even though she couldn't shift. The marks hummed beneath her skin, responding to her need. And suddenly, she felt it a pull, like a thread tugging at her consciousness. The mate bond. Cade was outside the maze, and the bond connected them no matter how much dark magic tried to interfere. If she followed that pull, it would lead her out. Arya opened her eyes and turned left, away from the path she'd taken before. The bond pulled stronger in this direction. She followed it, ignoring the phantom corridors that tried to lure her astray, trusting in the connection that tied her soul to Cade's. The phantom guards appeared again, closer this time. Arya pressed herself against the wall, but there was nowhere to hide. They were coming straight toward her. She couldn't fight three armored phantoms with cracked ribs and a ceremonial dagger. She needed a different strategy. Drawing on her empathic abilities, Arya projected confusion, making the phantoms feel disoriented, uncertain of their purpose. It was harder than projecting fear or submission, required more focus and energy she didn't have. But slowly, the guards' movements became erratic. They wandered past her alcove, arguing with each other in voices that echoed strangely. Arya slipped past them and kept moving, following the mate bond's pull. The corridor opened into another chamber, and this time, Arya's breath caught for a different reason. It was a memory made manifest, the servants' quarters from Shadowmoon Pack. Her old cot in the corner, the scratched floor she'd scrubbed 1,000 times, even the scent of harsh soap and humiliation that had permeated her life there. And standing in the center was herself. Not a phantom version or a twisted reflection, but Arya as she'd been just 2 weeks ago, thin, hollow-eyed, shoulders perpetually hunched in submission. The ghost of who she'd been stared at her with haunted amber eyes. "You can't outrun me," Past Arya said softly. "I'm always here. Always reminding you of what you really are." "I know," Arya replied, surprising herself with the gentleness in her voice. "You're part of me. You always will be." Then how can you claim to be a queen? How can you stand beside a king when you're still the broken Omega inside?" Arya approached her past self slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Because being broken doesn't mean being worthless. You survived. Even when surviving seemed impossible. You endured, even when every day was agony. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing anyone can do. Past Arya's expression crumpled. "I was so scared, all the time. I just wanted it to stop." "I know." Arya reached out, and when her hand touched her past self's shoulder, she felt tears streaming down her own face. "But you made it through. You brought us here. To this moment. To a place where we can be more than what they told us we were. What if I hold you back? What if you fail because of me? Then I'll fail knowing I honored where I came from. I'll fail knowing I never forgot the wolf who kept us alive when death would have been easier." Arya pulled her past self into an embrace. "You're not my shame. You're my strength. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for bringing us home." Past Arya dissolved into light, and that light flowed into Arya, filling the cracks in her soul with warmth. She felt her cracked ribs knit back together, felt her exhaustion ease, felt her power surge stronger than before. The maze had tried to use her past against her. Instead, she'd reclaimed it, integrated it, made it part of her foundation, rather than her weakness. The door ahead shimmered and became transparent. Through it, Arya could see daylight. The exit. She ran. The final corridor tried one last trick, the walls closing in, the ceiling dropping, the floor becoming slick with oil. Arya didn't slow. She channeled her wolf speed even without shifting, let the oracle marks burn beneath her skin, and burst through the exit just as the corridor sealed shut behind her. Sunlight hit her face like a blessing. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud it hurt her ears. Arya stood there, gasping, covered in blood and dirt, clutching the crown of stars, barely able to process that she'd made it. Then Cade was there, catching her as her legs gave out, holding her against his chest with a fierceness that spoke of fear finally released. 7 hours, he said into her hair, his voice rough. 7 hours you were in there. I felt every moment of your fear, your pain, your courage. I've never been more terrified or more proud. Did I? Arya's voice was hoarse. Did I pass? See for yourself. He turned her to face the crowd, and Arya saw it, thousands of wolves on their feet, cheering, celebrating, not just accepting her, but genuinely excited. She'd gone into the maze as a questioned Omega. She'd emerged as someone who'd proven her courage beyond doubt. Counselor Thaddeus approached, and for the first time since Arya had met him, he was smiling. "Lady Arya Winters, you have completed the trial of courage in 7 hours faster than any candidate in 50 years. You faced your deepest fears, overcame impossible odds, and claimed the crown of stars. The council recognizes your courage and your worthiness." 2 trials down, Counselor Vivian said, though her expression was sour. "One remains. Let her rest first." Cade's voice held a warning. "The trial of leadership can wait until tomorrow. The traditional waiting period is 3 days between trials, another counselor pointed out. Then she has 3 days. Cade's tone brooked no argument. And if anyone tries to interfere with her recovery, they'll answer to me personally. He swept Arya up into his arms, ignoring her weak protest that she could walk, and carried her toward the palace. The crowd parted before them, wolves bowing as their future queen passed. Back in her chambers, healers descended immediately. They treated her remaining wounds, gave her tonics for exhaustion and pain, and declared that she needed at least 24 hours of complete rest. "I'll be fine," Arya protested, as Sarah tried to tuck her into bed like a child. "It's just some bruises. You fought a fear demon with cracked ribs and won," Sarah said firmly. "You'll rest if I have to sit on you." Cade dismissed the healers and servants, leaving just the 2 of them. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand finding hers. "You were extraordinary today," he said softly. "The way you faced those fears, the way you integrated your past instead of running from it, that's not something that can be taught, Arya. That's wisdom that only comes from survival. I kept thinking about what you said, about your mother, about how she turned enemies into allies." Arya's eyes were heavy, exhaustion pulling at her despite the healer's tonics. "I couldn't turn the maze into an ally, but I could turn my past into strength. Is that close enough?" "It's better." Cade's thumb traced circles on her palm. "My mother would have loved you. She always said that the best queens were the ones who remembered what it felt like to be powerless. Will you tell me more about her? Before I fall asleep?" So Cade did. He told her about Queen Helena's laugh, about her habit of visiting the villages in disguise to understand her people's real struggles. He told her about the lullabies she used to sing, about how she'd trained with the warriors every morning despite the council's disapproval. He told her about the last time he saw her alive, how she'd hugged him tight and told him to never let anyone make him forget his compassion. "I failed at that," Cade admitted, his voice rough. "After she died, I became exactly what the council wanted, cold, focused only on power and expansion. I forgot how to be anything but a king." "And now?" Arya asked, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Now I have a mate who reminds me every day that strength and compassion aren't opposites, that being powerful doesn't mean being cruel." He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Sleep, Arya. Dream of victory. Because in 3 days, you'll face your final trial, and then nothing, not the council, not tradition, not the entire kingdom, will be able to deny that you're meant to be queen." Arya drifted off to his words, her hand still clasped in his, the crown of stars resting on the bedside table and casting gentle light across the room. She dreamed of her white wolf running free, oracle marks blazing silver in the moonlight. She dreamed of standing beside Cade, not behind him or in his shadow, but as his equal. She dreamed of a future where Omegas weren't dismissed as worthless, where rank mattered less than character, where queens could be made from broken wolves who chose to survive. When she woke the next morning, Cade was still there, asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand never having let go of hers. And Arya knew, with the certainty that came from oracle marks and mate bonds and something deeper than either, that whatever the final trial brought, she would face it the same way she'd faced everything else. With courage born from fear overcome, with strength forged in survival, with the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. 2 trials complete, 1 remained. The trial of leadership would determine if she could inspire others to follow, if she could command respect, if she could lead the kingdom into a better future. But as Arya watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and rose, as she felt the steady pulse of the mate bond connecting her to the sleeping king beside her, as she sensed her oracle-marked wolf stirring with anticipation rather than fear, she felt something she'd never felt before: confidence, not the arrogant certainty of someone who'd never failed, but the hard-won assurance of someone who'd fallen and learned to rise. Let the final trial come. She was ready. Chapter 10. The Trial of Leadership. 3 days of preparation felt simultaneously too long, and not long enough. Arya spent the time training with renewed intensity. Cade worked with her on projecting authority, on commanding presence without relying on dominant rank. Darius taught her tactical thinking, how to assess situations quickly and make decisions that others would follow. Even Rowan contributed, showing her how to read people's intentions through their body language and micro-expressions. Sarah coached her on speeches and public speaking, while Professor Aldrich drilled her on historical examples of great leadership both Lycan and from other shifter kingdoms. But it was the conversation with an unexpected visitor that changed everything. On the evening before the trial, Arya found Captain Mira waiting outside her chambers. The warrior she'd pardoned during the trial of wisdom stood at attention, her scarred face serious. "Lady Arya," Mira bowed deeply. "May I have a moment of your time?" "Of course, please, come in." Arya gestured her inside, curious. Mira entered but remained standing, her military bearing evident in every movement. "I came to thank you, and to offer you something." "You don't need to thank me. You saved innocent lives. That's what heroes do." The previous council wouldn't have seen it that way. They would have executed me to protect Councillor Vivian's son. Mira's expression hardened. "You risked political backlash to do what was right. That's the kind of leader wolves will die for." "I'd rather they live for me," Arya said softly, "which is exactly why they will." Mira stepped closer. "Tomorrow's trial will test your ability to lead, to inspire loyalty, to make others follow you even into danger. I want you to know, whatever the trial demands, you have my loyalty, and I'm not alone. There are many in this kingdom who see what you represent: change, justice, hope for those who've been overlooked." The words settled into Arya's chest like warmth. "Thank you, Captain. That means more than you know." After Mira left, Arya stood by the window, watching the moon rise over the palace grounds. Tomorrow would determine everything. 2 trials passed, but the final one would be the hardest because it required something she'd never had before: the ability to make others believe in her enough to follow. "You're overthinking again," Cade's voice came from the connecting door. He'd taken to leaving it unlocked, allowing him to check on her whenever her anxiety spiked through the bond. "I can't help it. What if no one follows me tomorrow? What if—" "Come here." It wasn't a command, just an invitation. Arya crossed to him, and he pulled her into his arms, her back against his chest, both of them facing the window. "Do you know what leadership really is? Telling people what to do? That's command. Leadership is different." His chin rested on top of her head. "Leadership is making people want to follow you because they believe in your vision, in your character, in your willingness to sacrifice for them. You've already demonstrated all of those things, Arya. You just need to trust that others see it. What if the trial is impossible? What if the council designs it so I can't win? Then you'll find a way to win anyway. That's what you do." She felt him smile against her hair. "You've survived every impossible thing they've thrown at you. Tomorrow won't be any different." They stood like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other's presence, until Arya finally felt ready to face whatever came next. The morning of the trial of leadership dawned cold and gray. Arya, dressed in armor again, but this time, it was ceremonial, polished silver etched with the symbols of the Lycan kingdom. The crown of stars she'd retrieved from the maze rested on a cushion beside her, its light seeming dimmer in the overcast morning. "You look like a queen," Sarah said, adjusting the final strap on Arya's armor. "No matter what happens today, remember you've already proven yourself to those who matter." The trial grounds were packed with even more wolves than the previous trials. Word had spread across the entire kingdom about the Omega who'd passed 2 impossible tests. Some had come to cheer her on, others had come hoping to witness her failure. Arya could feel all of their emotions pressing against her empathic senses: hope and doubt, support and hostility, curiosity and contempt. It was overwhelming, but she'd learned to filter it, to focus only on what mattered. The council assembled on their platform, and Arya noticed something different. Lyanna stood among them now, wearing the formal robes of a council advisor. Her violet eyes met Arya's with a look that promised challenges ahead. "Lady Arya Winters," Thaddeus's voice rang out, "you stand before us having completed the trial of wisdom and the trial of courage. Today, you face the final and most crucial test, the trial of leadership." The crowd hushed, waiting. "Leadership cannot be tested in isolation," Thaddeus continued. "A true leader must inspire loyalty, make difficult decisions under pressure, and put the needs of many before the needs of one. Your trial will test all of these qualities." "I'm ready," Arya said, her voice steady. "We shall see." Vivian stepped forward, and Arya's instinct screamed warning. Your task is this. Lead a team of warriors into the Shadow Woods and eliminate a rogue pack that has been terrorizing our border villages. You will have command of 10 soldiers. Your success will be measured not by whether you eliminate the rogues, but by whether your team follows your orders willingly, and whether you can make the hard choices a queen must make. Arya's mind raced. The Shadow Woods were notoriously dangerous dense forest, filled with natural predators and magical anomalies, and she'd be commanding experienced warriors who had no reason to respect an Omega's authority. There is one additional condition. Lyanna spoke for the first time, her voice carrying across the grounds. Your mate, King Cade, is forbidden from accompanying you. You must lead without his influence or protection. Cade's growl was audible even from where he sat on his throne, but he couldn't object without undermining the trial's legitimacy. I accept the terms, Arya said before Cade could argue. When do we leave? Immediately. Your team awaits at the northern gate. Thaddeus gestured, and 10 warriors emerged from the crowd. Arya's heart sank as she recognized several of them. 2 were from Lyanna's royal guard wolves who'd made their skepticism of her clear. 3 others wore the colors of Shadow Moon's rival pack, likely chosen specifically because they'd have no loyalty to her. The remaining 5 were unknowns, their expressions carefully neutral, and standing at the front of the group, arms crossed and expression hostile, was Commander Baltric Counselor Vivian's son, the one whose dereliction of duty Captain Mira had exposed. You expect me to lead the wolf I condemned? Arya asked, understanding the trap immediately. We expect you to lead warriors, regardless of personal history, Vivian said smoothly. Unless you're admitting you're incapable of putting aside petty grievances for the good of the kingdom. It was a perfect setup. If Arya refused, she'd appear vindictive and small-minded. If she accepted, she'd be leading a team that included at least one wolf who actively wanted her to fail. Commander Baltric, Arya addressed him directly. Can you follow orders from me? I can follow orders from a legitimate authority, Baltric said, the insult clear. Whether you qualify remains to be seen. Good enough. Arya turned to the rest of the team. My name is Arya Winters. For the duration of this mission, I am your commanding officer. I don't expect your respect. I haven't earned it yet. But I do expect your obedience. We're heading into dangerous territory to protect innocent wolves from rogues. That's bigger than any of our personal feelings. Can you accept that? Silence stretched for a long moment. Then, one of the unknown warriors stepped forward, a scarred female with kind eyes. I'm Corporal Tessa. I'll follow your orders, Lady Arya. One by one, 6 others echoed her acceptance. Baltric and the 2 royal guards remained silent, their hostility palpable. That'll have to do. Arya squared her shoulders. We leave now. Gear up and meet me at the northern gate in 10 minutes. As the warriors dispersed to prepare, Cade appeared at her side. His expression was stormy with worry and barely controlled anger. This is a trap, he said quietly. Baltric will sabotage you the first chance he gets. And those royal guards answer to Lyanna. They'll do whatever she's ordered them to do. I know. Arya met his silver gaze. But I have to do this anyway. Then promise me something. His hands framed her face. Promise me you'll come back. I can't, his voice cracked. I can't lose you, Arya. Not when I just found you. I promise. She rose on her toes and kissed him, brief but fierce, pouring everything she felt through the mate bond. Trust me, like you've been asking me to trust myself. The Shadow Woods lived up to their name. Dense canopy blocked most of the sunlight, leaving the forest floor in perpetual twilight. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, not quite animal, not quite natural. The air itself felt wrong, thick with old magic that made Arya's wolf uneasy. They'd been tracking the rogue pack for 3 hours, following signs of their passage, broken branches, claw marks on trees, the lingering scent of blood and violence. We should split up, Baltric suggested for the 3rd time. Cover more ground. No, Arya repeated patiently. We stay together. Splitting up in unknown hostile territory is how teams get killed. A real commander would know how to utilize resources efficiently, Baltric argued. A real commander keeps their team alive. Arya stopped, turning to face him. I understand you don't respect me. That's fine, but if you keep questioning every decision, You're going to get someone killed. Is your pride worth that? Baltric's jaw clenched, but he fell silent. They continued deeper into the woods, and Arya felt the tension building among the team. The royal guards whispered to each other in voices too low for her human hearing to catch. Several warriors kept glancing at her, clearly wondering if she knew what she was doing. Truthfully, Arya was terrified. She'd never led anyone before, never been responsible for lives in combat, but she channeled that fear into focus, using her empathic senses to monitor the team's emotional state and her enhanced Omega instincts to watch for danger. "Stop," she whispered suddenly, holding up her hand. The team froze. Arya crouched, pressing her palm to the ground, reaching out with her senses. There beneath the surface sounds of the forest. She felt it. Multiple heartbeats. Breathing. Movement. Ambush, she breathed. 20 meters ahead. At least 6, maybe more. "How can you possibly know that?" one of the royal guards challenged. "Omega senses. I can feel their presence." Arya's mind raced through tactical scenarios Darius had taught her. "They're waiting for us to walk into their kill zone. We need to flank them, hit from an unexpected angle. Or you're wrong, and we're wasting time chasing shadows," Baltric muttered. "Then I'm wrong, but if I'm right and we ignore it, some of you won't be going home." Arya met each warrior's eyes in turn. "I need you to trust me. Just this once. If I'm wrong, you can report my incompetence to the council, but if I'm right, we all survive." "Deal?" Corporal Tessa nodded immediately. "I'm with you, Lady Arya. Tell us the plan." Arya quickly outlined a strategy split into 2 groups of 5, circle around to flank the ambush from both sides, and use her empathic abilities to coordinate the attack with outspoken commands that might alert the rogues. "That's insane," Baltric said. "You can't coordinate a team through emotions. Watch me." Arya closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathic senses to each member of the team. It was harder than projecting to one wolf, required more focus and precision. But slowly, she established connections, threads of awareness that let her feel where each warrior was positioned. Let her send simple emotional cues. Move left, wait, advance, strike. It wasn't perfect. Some warriors resisted the connection, uncomfortable with the intimacy of it, but enough accepted it that Arya could work with it. They split into groups. Arya led one team, Baltric the other. As they crept through the undergrowth, Arya felt her suspicions confirmed the rogues were definitely there, positioned in a classic ambush formation. She sent a pulse of ready through the empathic connections. On her signal, both teams struck simultaneously. The rogues were caught completely off guard. Arya's team hit them from the left, Baltric's from the right, and what should have been a deadly ambush turned into chaos for the rogues instead. The fight was brutal but brief. Arya used her empathic abilities to coordinate her team, making them move as one unit instead of 10 individuals. When one warrior was about to be blindsided, she sent a warning surge of danger that let them dodge. When the rogues tried to regroup, she projected confusion at them, breaking their formation. It was exhausting, using her abilities at this level, but it worked. Within minutes, the rogues were either dead or fleeing deeper into the woods. Arya's team had sustained only minor injuries, scrapes and bruises, nothing serious. "That was..." Tessa breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. "I've never experienced anything like that. It was like we were one pack, all thinking together." "That's what Omega abilities do," Arya said, swaying slightly with exhaustion. "They connect, unite, turn individuals into..." An arrow whistled past her ear. Arya spun to see more rogues emerging from the trees. A second wave, at least a dozen strong. And at their head was a massive alpha, his eyes glowing red with bloodlust. "Shield formation," Arya commanded, and 7 warriors immediately moved to obey. But Baltric and the 2 royal guards hesitated, their loyalty finally showing its cracks. That moment of hesitation cost them. The alpha crashed into their formation before it could fully form, scattering warriors like leaves. One of the royal guards went down with a scream. Baltric stumbled backward, fear finally showing on his face. Arya reached for her ceremonial dagger, but she knew it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, scattered, facing an alpha who was clearly insane with rage. This was the moment. The choice a leader had to make. She could order a retreat, save most of her team, but abandon the fallen guard and fail the mission. She could fight and risk everyone dying. Or she could find a third option, break the rules entirely. Arya stepped forward, placing herself between the rogue Alpha and her scattered team. She dropped her dagger and spread her arms wide, exposing her throat in the ultimate submission. "Stop!" Her voice rang with authority powered by oracle marks. "I challenge you, Alpha to Alpha." "You're not an Alpha," the rogue snarled. "You're prey. I'm an oracle marked Omega, mate to the Lycan King, and future queen of this kingdom." Arya's voice didn't waver. "And I challenge you for leadership of your pack. Traditional combat, one-on-one, winner takes all." The rogue Alpha paused, confusion flickering across his maddened face. "Don't be stupid," Baltrick hissed. "He'll tear you apart." "Probably," Arya agreed. "But it'll give you time to regroup and protect the wounded. That's what leaders do, they sacrifice themselves so their team survives." Understanding dawned in several warriors' eyes. This wasn't about winning the fight. It was about proving she'd die before abandoning her team. "I accept your challenge, little Omega," the Alpha growled. "When I finish killing you, I'll kill the rest of them too. We'll see about that." Arya reached deep inside herself, past fear and doubt, to the place where her wolf lived. "But first, I think it's time I showed you what an oracle-marked Omega can really do." For the first time since entering the maze, Arya felt her wolf surge forward without resistance. The Shadow Wood's dark magic had suppressed her shifting ability, but here, in this moment of desperate need, the oracle marks burned through that suppression like fire through paper. She shifted. Chapter 10. The Trial of Leadership. Part 2. Arya's white wolf emerged in a blaze of silver light. The oracle marks that had been invisible on her human skin blazed like liquid moonlight across her fur. She was smaller than the rogue Alpha, barely half his size, but the power radiating from her made several rogues stumble backward in instinctive submission. The Alpha circled her, his massive jaws dripping saliva. "Pretty marks won't save you, little wolf," he lunged. Arya dodged, using her smaller size and agility to her advantage. She couldn't match his strength, but she didn't need to. She just needed to survive long enough for her team to regroup. Through her empathic connection, she felt Tessa rallying the warriors, pulling them into formation, protecting the wounded. Baltrick was frozen, watching the fight with an expression that might have been respect or horror. Arya couldn't tell which. The Alpha's claws raked across her shoulder, and pain exploded through her. Blood matted her white fur, but Arya kept moving, kept dodging. She struck back when she could, quick bites that did minimal damage but forced the Alpha to stay focused on her instead of her team. "You fight like prey," the Alpha roared, frustrated. "Stand and face me. I'm buying time." Arya's wolf sent the thought through their mental connection. "My team needs 30 more seconds. They abandoned you. They're retreating." But Arya could feel through the empathic bonds that they weren't retreating, they were repositioning. Tessa had seen what Arya was doing and was preparing the team to strike once the Alpha was fully focused on his fight. 20 seconds. The Alpha caught her leg, his jaws crushing down. Arya yelped as bone cracked, agony shooting through her. She twisted, using her momentum to rake her claws across his eyes. He released her with a howl of pain, blood streaming down his face. 10 seconds. Arya could barely stand on her injured leg. The Alpha was bleeding but still strong, still deadly. He stalked toward her, done playing, ready to finish it. "Your team is running," he growled. "You died for nothing. Look again." The Alpha turned just as Tessa's team struck from 3 directions at once. The coordinated assault powered by Arya's empathic connections hit the rogues like a hammer. The remaining rogues, seeing their Alpha surrounded and their ambush turned against them, broke and ran. The Alpha tried to follow, but Corporal Tessa stepped into his path, her blade at his throat. "You lost," Tessa said coldly. "Your pack is scattered. Your territory is forfeit. Surrender or die." For a moment, the Alpha's eyes burned with defiance. Then he saw Arya limping forward, saw the oracle marks still blazing on her white fur, saw the team that had rallied behind her despite being given every reason not to. He bowed his head in submission. Arya shifted back to human form. gasping as her injuries translated to her human body. Her leg was definitely broken, her shoulder torn open, and she was pretty sure she'd cracked more ribs. "Bind him," she commanded through gritted teeth. "We're taking him back to stand trial. The rest of the rogues can be dealt with later. Right now, we need to get our wounded back to safety." "You're the wounded," Baldric said, his voice strange. He approached slowly, his earlier hostility replaced by something that looked like awe. You actually did it. You challenged an alpha twice your size to save us. That's what leaders do." Arya swayed, and Tessa caught her before she fell. "They don't abandon their team. Ever. Even when the team didn't deserve it?" Baldric's expression was tortured. "Even when some of us came here hoping you'd fail? Especially then." Arya met his eyes. "Because proving yourself to enemies is more powerful than proving yourself to friends. Will you help me get everyone home now?" Baldric dropped to one knee, his head bowed. "I was wrong about you, Lady Arya. Completely, shamefully wrong. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to serve you as queen." One by one, the other warriors followed, including the 2 royal guards who'd been sent to undermine her. They knelt in the blood-soaked forest, pledging loyalty to the Omega who'd sacrificed herself to save them. If this moment gave you chills, subscribe because Arya's story is far from over, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Wolves like her deserve an audience that recognizes true strength when they see it. Comment: did you see that victory coming, or did Arya surprise you? Let me know your favorite moment from this trial. The journey back to the palace was agonizing. Arya couldn't walk on her broken leg, so Baldric and Tessa took turns carrying her. The captured alpha was dragged behind them in silver chains. The wounded were supported by their teammates. It took twice as long as the journey out, and every step sent fresh waves of pain through Arya's body. But she stayed conscious, stayed aware, monitoring her team through the empathic connections, making sure no one fell behind, ensuring everyone made it home. When they finally emerged from the Shadow Woods at sunset, they found the entire kingdom waiting. Cade stood at the front, and the moment he saw Arya bloody, broken, but alive, his control shattered. He was there in seconds, taking her from Baldric's arms with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the rage in his eyes. "Who did this?" His voice was lethal. "Which one of you let my mate get this injured?" "It wasn't them," Arya said quickly, her hand on his chest. "I chose to fight the Alpha. I chose to protect them. This is on me. You're barely conscious. You've lost too much blood. I completed the mission." Arya's voice was weak but firm. "We eliminated the rogue threat. We captured their Alpha. Everyone on my team survived. That's what matters." The council approached, Thaddeus in the lead. His ancient eyes swept over the scene, the wounded warriors, the captured Alpha, and Arya bleeding in her mate's arms. "Tell us what happened," he commanded. Corporal Tessa stepped forward. "Lady Arya led us into the Shadow Woods. She detected a rogue ambush using her Omega senses, saving us from walking into a trap. She coordinated our counterattack, using empathic connections, making us fight as one unit. When a second wave attacked and scattered our formation, she challenged their Alpha to single combat to buy us time to regroup. She shouldn't have survived that fight," Baldric added, his voice rough. "The Alpha was twice her size, 3 times her strength, but she used her agility, her intelligence, and her oracle-blessed power to hold him off until we could execute the strategy she'd telepathically coordinated. She sacrificed herself so we could live. And then?" Vivian's voice was sharp, clearly hoping for some failure to report. "And then we won." One of the royal guards spoke up, his earlier hostility completely gone. "Because Lady Arya taught us that leadership isn't about being the strongest or the highest ranked. It's about being willing to die for those you lead. She earned our loyalty in blood and courage." Thaddeus turned to the rest of Arya's team. "Do you all agree with this assessment?" "Yes, Counselor," they chorused as one. "Then it is the judgment of this council that Lady Arya Winters has passed the trial of leadership." Thaddeus's voice rang across the gathered crowd. "She has demonstrated wisdom, courage, and the ability to inspire loyalty even in those who doubted her. She has proven herself worthy of the title of queen." The crowd erupted in cheers. "There is one final formality," Thaddeus continued, pulling out an ornate scroll. "The council must vote to officially recognize her as Queen of the Lycan Kingdom. All in favor?" "Aye," said 9 voices, including Thaddeus himself. Only Vivian and Lyanna remained silent. "The ayes have it." Thaddeus smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time. "Lady Arya Winters, by the power vested in this council and witnessed by the kingdom, you are hereby recognized as Queen of the Lycans, mate to King Cade, and bearer of the Moon Goddess's blessing." Cade's arms tightened around her. "You did it," he whispered. "You're queen, Arya. My queen." "About time," Arya murmured, then promptly passed out from blood loss. She woke 3 days later. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight streaming through the windows. Arya's body ached, but the sharp pain was gone, replaced by the dull throb of healing injuries. She was tucked into her massive bed, wrapped in soft blankets that smelled like Cade. "Speaking of whom, you're awake." His voice came from the chair beside her bed. In the moonlight, she could see he looked terrible, exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and his hair disheveled. "Finally, do you have any idea how terrifying it is to feel your mate's life force flickering for 3 days straight?" "Sorry," Arya croaked, her throat dry. Cade was beside her in an instant, holding a glass of water to her lips. After she drank, he set it aside and simply held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "The healers say you'll make a full recovery. Broken leg is mended, shoulder wound is closed, ribs are healing. You'll be sore for another week, but you'll survive." His voice cracked on the last word. "You scared me, Arya. When I saw you being carried out of those woods, covered in blood, I thought I'd lost you. Takes more than a rogue alpha to kill me." Arya tried to smile, but her face hurt. "Did I really do it? Pass all 3 trials? You did more than pass. You revolutionized them." Cade lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "In the 3 days since your trial of leadership, 17 Omegas from across the kingdom have come forward, asking to be trained for positions of authority. Captain Mira has been flooded with applications from wolves who want to serve under a queen who values courage over rank. And the council, even Vivian, has been forced to acknowledge that you've earned your crown." "What about Lyanna?" Cade's expression darkened. "That's a conversation for when you're stronger. For now, just know that she's been neutralized." Arya wanted to press for details, but exhaustion was pulling at her again. "Cade, can you stay, just until I fall asleep?" "I'm not going anywhere." He climbed into the bed beside her, careful not to jostle her injuries, and pulled her against his chest. "I'll be here when you wake up, and every moment after that. You're my mate, my queen, and the most extraordinary wolf I've ever known." Arya drifted off to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, feeling safer than she'd ever felt in her life. When she woke again, it was to find Sarah and a team of attendants preparing her for something important. "What's happening?" Arya asked, confused. "Your coronation," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's tradition 3 days after completing the trials. The new queen is officially crowned before the entire kingdom." 3 days? But I just woke up. Which is perfect timing. The healers cleared you this morning. Now come on, we have a lot to do and not much time to do it. The next few hours were a whirlwind of bathing, dressing, and preparation. Arya was fitted into a gown that took her breath away, white silk, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that matched her oracle marks. Her hair was styled in an elaborate series of braids, woven with crystals that caught the light. Jewelry that had belonged to Queen Helena was placed around her neck and wrists, symbols of continuity and blessing from Cade's mother. Finally, Sarah placed a circlet of silver on her head, temporary, until the actual crown was placed during the ceremony. "You look like a queen," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Like you were always meant to be." "I don't feel like a queen. I feel like an Omega playing dress-up." "That's because you have humility. Which is exactly why you'll be a great queen." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Now come on. Your kingdom is waiting." The coronation hall was packed beyond capacity. Wolves lined every wall, filled every seat, stood in every available space. As Arya entered on Cade's arm, they rose as one, their voices joining in a traditional Lycan hymn of welcome. Arya walked down the center aisle, feeling thousands of eyes on her. Some looked at her with hope, others with curiosity, a few still with skepticism, but none with the contempt she'd grown used to in Shadow Moon Pack. At the front of the hall, the council waited. Thaddeus held the true crown of stars, the one Arya had retrieved from the maze, now mounted on a frame of silver and embedded with gems that represented each territory of the Lycan Kingdom. Arya Winters, Thaddeus's voice rang out. You have completed the 3 trials of queenship. You have proven your wisdom by making just decisions that serve the kingdom's needs. You have proven your courage by facing your deepest fears and emerging victorious. You have proven your leadership by inspiring loyalty even in those who doubted you. He lifted the crown, and moonlight streaming through the windows made it blaze with inner fire. Do you swear to rule with wisdom, courage, and compassion, to protect the weak and challenge the strong, to be a voice for those who cannot speak and a shield for those who cannot fight, to serve this kingdom before yourself, now and always? Arya's voice rang clear and strong. I swear. Then by the power vested in me by this council, by the blessing of the moon goddess whose marks you bear, and by the will of the kingdom assembled here, I crown you Arya Winters, Queen of the Lycan Kingdom. The crown settled on her head, and Arya felt something shift in the very fabric of reality. The oracle marks on her wolf blazed beneath her skin, visible even in human form as silver light traced patterns across her arms and neck. The mate bond with Cade flared to life, stronger than ever, binding them not just as mates but as rulers together. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud they shook the windows. Cade took her hand, raising it high. Your queen, he shouted over the noise. Our queen, the crowd roared back. Long live Queen Arya. As the celebration exploded around her, as wolves she'd never met cheered her name. As the council, even Vivian, bowed in genuine respect, Arya felt tears streaming down her face. She'd done it. The worthless Omega from Shadow Moon Pack had become queen of the Lycan Kingdom. But as she looked out at the crowd, as she felt the weight of the crown and the responsibility it represented, Arya knew this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A beginning to a reign that would change everything. Chapter 11. The Queen's Reign. The coronation celebration lasted until dawn. Arya danced with Cade, accepted congratulations from hundreds of wolves, and gave her first official speech as queen, a promise to create a kingdom where rank mattered less than character, where every wolf had value regardless of their station. The crowd loved it. The council looked nervous. And Lyanna, Arya noticed, had disappeared before the ceremony even ended. When Arya finally returned to her chambers, now officially the queen's suite, she found Cade waiting with a serious expression that immediately put her on alert. We need to talk about Lyanna, he said, without preamble. Arya sank into a chair, exhaustion from the day's events catching up with her. Tell me, while you were unconscious, Rowan completed his investigation into the poisoned necklace. Cade's jaw clenched. The trail led back to Lyanna. She was the one who placed it in your chambers. The revelation didn't surprise Arya as much as it should have. She wanted me gone. She wanted you dead. Cade's eyes flashed silver with rage. For 10 years, she served at my side. I trusted her, relied on her, and she was willing to murder my mate to preserve her own ambitions. What happened to her? I gave her a choice: face execution for treason, or accept exile and never return to Lycan territory. Cade's expression was grim. She chose exile, left 2 days ago with a handful of loyalists. But Arya, you need to understand, Lyanna is dangerous, intelligent, resourceful, and now she has a personal vendetta against you. So, she'll come back. Eventually, when she's gathered enough support, when she thinks she can win. He moved to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. I'm sorry. I brought danger to your doorstep by trusting the wrong wolf. You couldn't have known. Arya squeezed his hands. And we'll deal with Lyanna when the time comes. Together, Cade agreed. His expression shifted, becoming almost vulnerable. There's something else we need to discuss, the mate bond. Arya's heart skipped. They danced around this topic for weeks, the completion of the bond, the mating bite that would tie them together permanently, the intimacy that came with full acceptance. I know tradition says we should complete the bond immediately after coronation, Cade continued. But I won't pressure you, Arya. You've been through hell these past weeks. If you need time, I don't need time. The words came out more confident than Arya felt. I need you. I've been running from the bond because I was scared. Scared of being owned again. Scared of losing myself. Scared of not being enough. But you've shown me that the mate bond isn't about ownership. It's about partnership. It is, Cade said softly. Completing the bond won't change who you are, Arya. It'll just strengthen the connection we already have. You'll feel my emotions more clearly. I'll feel yours. We'll be able to communicate telepathically. And yes, the physical intimacy will seal it permanently. But you'll still be you. Still be the queen who challenges me, who makes me want to be better. Arya stood, pulling him up with her. Then let's complete it. Tonight, no more waiting, no more fear. Just us. Cade's eyes blazed with silver fire. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. He swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom, as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. And as he laid her gently on the bed, as his hands traced the oracle marks that glowed silver on her skin, as their lips met in a kiss that tasted of promise and forever, Arya felt the mate bond surge between them. What followed was tender and fierce, gentle and consuming. Cade worshipped every scar, every mark of survival on her body. He made her feel cherished, desired, loved in ways she'd never imagined possible. And when his teeth finally sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the mating bite that would mark her as his forever, Arya cried out not in pain but in overwhelming joy. The bond snapped fully into place. Suddenly, Arya could feel everything Cade felt: his love for her, fierce and all-consuming, his pride in who she'd become, his absolute certainty that she was his perfect match. And through the bond, he felt her emotions too, her love, her trust, her complete acceptance of him. They were no longer two separate souls connected by a thread. They were one whole, perfectly balanced, stronger together than they could ever be apart. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the sheets, Arya traced the tattoos on Cade's chest. I can feel your thoughts, she said, wonder in her voice. Not clearly, but impressions, emotions. It works both ways. Cade's hand played with her hair. I can feel your contentment. Your happiness. It's intoxicating. Is this what it was like for your parents? According to my mother's journals, yes. His expression grew distant. She wrote that completing the bond with my father was like finding the missing piece of her soul, that, even during their worst arguments, she could feel his love through the bond, unwavering and absolute. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you, probably would have tried to adopt you within 5 minutes of meeting you. Cade smiled sadly. She had a weakness for underdogs, always championed the wolves everyone else overlooked. Like me. Like you. He pulled her closer. But you're not an underdog anymore, Arya. You're a queen, my queen, and you're going to change this kingdom in ways that terrify the council and inspire everyone else. No pressure then. But Arya was smiling. They dozed as dawn turned to morning, wrapped in each other's presence and the newly completed bond. When they finally emerged from their chambers in the afternoon, both bearing fresh mating bites that made their status clear to everyone, they found the palace buzzing with activity. Sarah met them with an apologetic expression. Your Majesties, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are several urgent matters requiring the Queen's attention. Already? Arya had been queen for less than a day. A queen's work is never done, Cade said with sympathy. What are the issues? Sarah consulted her list. First, representatives from 3 border packs have requested audience with Queen Arya specifically. They want to discuss Omega rights and protections. Second, Captain Mira is requesting permission to establish a new division of warriors focused on protecting civilians, rather than conquest. Third, Counselor Vivian has submitted a formal request for her son to be pardoned, given that the Queen herself pardoned Captain Mira. Arya's mind raced. These weren't simple issues, each one carried political weight and would set precedents for her reign. Tell the border pack representatives I'll meet with them tomorrow afternoon, Arya decided. Schedule it in the throne room so the entire court can witness. Captain Mira's request is approved. Have her submit a detailed proposal for structure and funding. And as for Counselor Vivian's request, she paused, considering. This was a test not from the council, but from the kingdom. How would Queen Arya handle a counselor trying to use her mercy against her? Tell Counselor Vivian that I'll review her son's case personally, but remind her that Captain Mira was pardoned because she disobeyed orders to save innocent lives. If Commander Baltrick can demonstrate similar selfless service, I'll consider clemency. Otherwise, his investigation proceeds as planned. Sarah's smile was approving. Yes, Your Majesty, I'll convey your message. As Sarah hurried off, Cade wrapped his arm around Arya's waist. Brilliant. You offered potential mercy while making it clear that pardons must be earned, not demanded. Vivian can't argue without looking petty. I learned from watching you, Arya admitted. The way you balance firmness with fairness. No, love, that's all you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I tend to rule through intimidation. You're teaching me there's another way. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of queenly duties. Arya met with various officials, signed documents, listened to petitions, and slowly began to understand the enormous responsibility she'd taken on. Every decision affected lives. Every word carried weight. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was exactly where she was meant to be. That evening, Arya stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom, watching lights flicker in the city below. Each light represented wolves living their lives, working, loving, surviving. Her subjects now, her responsibility. Having second thoughts, Cade joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Third and fourth thoughts. Arya accepted the glass gratefully. What if I'm not ready for this? What if I make terrible decisions that hurt people? Then you'll learn from them and do better next time. That's what good rulers do. Cade gestured to the city below. You know what I see when I look at this kingdom? Power, territory, strategic advantage. But do you know what you see? What? People, wolves with stories and struggles and dreams. That's your gift, Arya. You haven't forgotten what it's like to be powerless, so you'll never take power for granted. You'll wield it carefully, thoughtfully, always remembering that behind every law and policy are real lives affected. And if that's not enough, then you'll have me beside you. He pulled her close, and through the mate bond, Arya felt his absolute confidence in her. We're partners now. In everything. Your burdens are mine. Your victories are mine. We rise or fall together. Arya leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his presence. I want to do something. Something that matters. Like what? I want to establish protections for Omegas across the kingdom. Not just laws that say they can't be abused, but actual support systems, education programs, job training, paths to advancement that don't require them to be servants. The ideas had been forming in her mind since her coronation, and I want to create a council specifically for low-ranking wolves, a way for their voices to be heard at the highest levels of government. Cade was quiet for a moment, and Arya worried she'd overstepped. Then he smiled, not his usual controlled expression, but a genuine grin of pure pride. Do it. Draft the proposals. I'll support every word. He turned her to face him. This is why the moon goddess chose you, Arya. Not despite your past, but because of it. You're going to build a kingdom where wolves like you don't just survive, they thrive. Over the following weeks, Arya threw herself into her new role. She met with the border pack representatives, and was stunned to discover they weren't just asking about Omega protections. They were asking if their own Omegas could come to the capital for training. Word had spread about Queen Arya's abilities, and suddenly Omegas across the kingdom were awakening to possibilities they'd never imagined. Captain Mira's civilian protection force was approved and became wildly popular, with volunteers flooding in from packs that had previously only valued offensive warriors. Commander Baltrick, to everyone's surprise, requested to serve under Captain Mira. His time helping Arya return from the Shadow Woods had changed him, and he wanted to prove he could be better than his past mistakes. Arya established the Common Council, a body of elected representatives from non-alpha ranks who would advise the crown on issues affecting everyday wolves. The traditional council hated it. The kingdom loved it. She also began the process of investigating Queen Helena's death. With Rowan's help, she uncovered evidence that several council members, now long dead or retired, had been involved in poisoning the former queen. The revelation sent shockwaves through the political establishment and allowed Arya to purge corruption that had festered for 2 decades. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some alphas grumbled about Omegas getting too much power. Some traditionalists complained that Arya was dismantling centuries of hierarchy. Rumors spread that Queen Arya was weakening the kingdom, making it vulnerable. Then, the rogues attacked. A massive force, at least 200 strong, descended on a border village one night. They came with fire and violence, clearly intending to test the new queen's resolve. Arya and Cade led the response personally. What the rogues didn't expect was that the weak queen could coordinate an entire army through empathic connections, turning separate units into one cohesive fighting force. What they didn't anticipate was that her civilian protection force had trained the villagers in basic defense, making them harder to terrorize. And what they definitely didn't expect was that Queen Arya could shift into her oracle-marked wolf and project waves of emotion so powerful that half the rogue force surrendered without fighting, overwhelmed by sudden terror and confusion. The battle was won in under an hour. The few rogues who survived to retreat carried stories back to every corner of the realm. The Omega Queen was not weak. She was something new, something powerful, something that defied everything they thought they knew about hierarchy and strength. After that, the grumbling quieted. The complaints faded. Because results spoke louder than tradition, and Queen Arya's results were undeniable. 3 months after her coronation, Arya stood in the throne room with Cade at her side, addressing the assembled court for her first official State of the Kingdom speech. "When I came to this palace," she began, her voice steady and strong, "I was an Omega who'd been told my entire life that I was worthless, that my only value was in serving others, that wolves like me should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity we were allowed." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd, nobles and servants, warriors and scholars, high-ranking alphas and common wolves all gathered together. "But I learned something in these months as your queen. Strength doesn't come from rank or status. It comes from resilience, from surviving things that should have broken you, from choosing compassion even when cruelty would be easier." Through the mate bond, Arya felt Cade's pride and love washing over her, giving her strength to continue. This kingdom was built on hierarchy and dominance, and for centuries, that system worked. But it also left behind countless wolves who had value that was never recognized, potential that was never nurtured, voices that were never heard. She stepped forward, the crown of stars catching the light. "I'm not interested in destroying our traditions. I'm interested in evolving them, in creating a kingdom where every wolf, regardless of rank, has the opportunity to rise based on merit and character. Where Omegas can become warriors, scholars, leaders. Where strength is measured not by dominance but by contribution. Some of you think these changes make us weak. I'm here to tell you they make us stronger. A kingdom that utilizes the gifts of all its wolves, not just the alphas at the top, is a kingdom that can withstand any threat." The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. "I am Queen Arya, the Omega who became a ruler, and I promise you this, as long as I wear this crown, no wolf in this kingdom will ever be told they are worthless because of their rank. No wolf will be denied opportunity because of their birth. And no wolf will suffer alone while others look away." She raised her hand, and her oracle marks blazed silver across her skin, visible to everyone, a reminder of the moon goddess's blessing. "This is my vow as your queen. This is the kingdom we will build together. Not through dominance, but through unity. Not through fear, but through purpose. Not by crushing the weak, but by elevating them." The throne room erupted in applause that shook the rafters. Cade took her hand, raising it high. "Your queen," he shouted. "Our queen! Our queen!" The crowd roared back. And this time, Arya heard no doubt in their voices. Only conviction. Only pride. Only hope for the future she was building. As the celebration swirled around her, as wolves she'd helped personally approach to thank her, as even the traditional counselors bowed with genuine respect, Arya felt the weight of the crown on her head. It was heavy. It was a burden. But it was hers, and she would carry it with the same strength that had kept her alive for 19 years in Shadowmoon Pack. The same resilience that had helped her survive impossible trials. The same courage that had allowed her to face her fears and emerge transformed. Because Arya Winters, former Omega, current queen, forever survivor, had learned the most important lesson of all. You are not defined by how others see you. You are defined by how you choose to see yourself. And Arya chose to see herself as she truly was. Strong, worthy, powerful. A queen who would change the world. One decision at a time. One law at a time. One life saved at a time. And beside her, always, was Cade, her mate, her partner, her equal in all things. Together, they would forge a new era for the Lycan Kingdom, an era where rank meant less than character, where the lowest could rise to the highest, where an Omega could be a queen, and where love, true, mate bond, moon goddess blessed love conquered all. Epilogue. 6 months later, Arya stood in the garden where she'd first seen the oracle marks on her wolf, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. The healers had confirmed it that morning. She was pregnant, an heir to the Lycan Kingdom, conceived in love and blessed by the moon goddess. "You're thinking too loudly," Cade said, approaching from behind and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I can feel your emotions spiraling through the bond." "I'm scared," Arya admitted. "What if I'm a terrible mother? What if you love our child the way you wish you'd been loved?" Cade interrupted gently. "What if you protect them, nurture them, and teach them that their worth isn't determined by their rank or their strength, but by their character?" "That sounds exhausting. Parenting usually is." He turned her to face him, his silver eyes soft with love. "But we'll do it together, just like everything else." Through their bond, Arya felt his absolute confidence, his unwavering support, his love that had never faltered, not once, since the moment he'd claimed her as his mate. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, my queen, my mate, my Arya." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for surviving long enough to find me. Thank you for being brave enough to become who you were always meant to be. Thank you for showing this kingdom and me that strength comes in forms we never expected." In the distance, the palace bells began to ring, calling them back to their duties, to the kingdom that needed them, to the future they were building together. But for one perfect moment, they simply stood in the garden, two souls perfectly matched, holding each other as the sun set over the Lycan Kingdom. An Omega and a king, a queen and her mate, a love story that had defied every expectation and rewritten every rule. And somewhere, in the realm of the moon goddess, Queen Helena smiled, because her son had finally found his match, and the kingdom had finally found its heart. Thank you for following Arya's journey from rejected Omega to Lycan Queen. Her story proves that true strength comes not from rank, but from resilience, compassion, and the courage to become who you were always meant to be.